This is Jocko Podcast number 127 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
Iwo Jima is to me hallowed, blessed, spiritual, sacred, pure ground. If the spirits of the dead could speak, what would they be saying to me? Count off, Marines and sailors, you of the vanquished dead. When your number reaches 7,000, we will know that you are present and accounted for in this, your eternal duty station. Serve well. Your ranks are growing each passing day as some of us, your mates in war, are coming to join you. Those endless hours of terrifying nights, the carnage, devastation, and pain turned hope into despair. The remnants of formerly dynamic human bodies that carried hearts filled with dreams of peace, home, and loved ones. After the rush of battle, my eyes became heavy with tears. My body trembled with rage as I looked upon the broken bodies, the searing invasion of human flesh. Aftermath of war, an elemental, suffocating fear through and through my very soul. The intensely surging immediacy of the action was aggravated, no place to hide. There was not only an incompatibility between the Marines and the defending Japs, but the very nature of this morbid little island. The sounds of battle, which were intensified by the human voice with all its emotions, are absent today. The moral revulsion that took place here so many years ago has been forgotten, except by those who fought here and survived, and those who lost loved ones here. And that is an excerpt from a book called Hell Yes, I'd Do It Again, written by a man, actually written by a Marine named T. Fred Harvey, who fought in World War II in the Pacific Theater, including in the Battle of Iwo Jima, where he was severely wounded for a second time. But he survived the war and has lived an amazing life, and it is an incredible honor to have this hero here with us to share some of the lessons that he learned. Mr. Harvey, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. I've heard a lot about this show, and I'm really pleased that you've invited me to come here and speak to you. Well,
maybe you can just keep coming back because we'll just sit and listen to you. We got no problem with that, sir. So I guess we always try and go back to the beginning a little bit and learn a little bit about you. And I know you're growing up, and your book has a bunch of incredible anecdotal stories about what it was like growing up in Texas during the Depression. So, you know, I was talking to you earlier, and I said people don't know what the Depression was really like. And you described it in one word. You said hungry. So that's a real thing, huh? During the Depression.
Yeah, that was a real thing. I vividly remember all the good times while eating and the hungry times when I was really hungry. I joined the Marine Corps. That's the first time I had adequate food to satisfy the hunger within me.
So, and you grew up with a single mom for the most part. So you I know your dad was doing good in construction, but then the Depression hit.
Yeah, the Depression hit, and it really hit the Harvey family. At one time, the Harvey family consisted of 11 people, 9 girls, 2 boys, a father and mother. And my mother was the center of my universe. When I went into the Marine Corps, and the last night that I spent in Odessa before I got to boot camp, the train stopped in my hometown of Odessa, and they had the band, high school band, and a lot of people from town were there to greet us. The conductor said, we're going to stop for 20 minutes because the people of Odessa want to see you off. There was 3 of us going to the Marine Corps at that time. When we got there were girls there that were throwing kisses on me that I never dreamed of being able to even touch. And I was about ready to quit the Marine Corps and stay there. Well, during all this, somebody grabbed my ear and jerked me around behind the depot, and it was my mom, Jessie Lee. My mom was a Comanche Indian, and she was a warrior. She pulled me around in the dark of the night behind the outside of the crowd, so nobody could hear what she had to say. And she called me Sonny because I was so bright. She put this hand up in front of me like this right there, so I could see it. She said, "Sonny, you listen, and you listen good." "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Number 1, when this war is over, you come home to us." "Yes, ma'am." "And don't you come home no drunkard. And you don't come home no coward." And you know what that 4th one was? "And you don't come home with no tattoos." And I sure don't have any tattoos. And that was when she sent me off to San Diego. And I'll tell you a little bit later in this session, she came out to see me, and you'll see the reason why she came out to see me.
So you actually at one point, and I thought that was a real interesting thing because it seemed like you got a lot of weight on your shoulders as a youngster. And I'm going to go to the book here for a minute. "I greeted my mom cheerfully. She avoided my eyes," and this is just you coming home from school. "I greeted my mom cheerfully as usual. She avoided my eyes and wiped her own with her apron. I noted with concern a puffy redness about them. She got up and went to the oven and brought out a baked potato and a big bowl of pinto beans. Thanking her, I dug in. In silence, she entered that same bedroom. My thoughts centered wholly on the food. Without preamble, I heard a loud, beseechingly desperate cry come through the closed door. 'No, Jesse, not that.' And that was your dad. With a gasp, I spewed a mouthful of food, knocked over the small table, and went through the door without benefit of the knob. In the dimly lit bedroom, I viewed a scene of heart-choking horror, a picture forever etched in my memory. My father desperately grappled for the pistol my mother tried to bring down on herself or him. Without wavering or hesitation, I lunged at her with all the force I could muster. I caught her with a fist to the side of her head. She sagged at the knees, dropped the pistol, and fell forward. Inert, she laid down on the floor. I was horrified by what I had done. My father staggered back and slumped, whimpering, into a corner. I headed to the bathroom and came out with a bath towel, sopping wet with cold water. I applied it to her suffering face until she came around. Unsteadily, I helped her to her feet and then seated her on the side of the bed. All the while, Dad remained in the corner too, shaking to get up or offer any assistance. Too shaking to get up or offer any assistance. Sobbing, I cried, "Why, Mother? Why? Why?" With a clear, steady voice, she said, "Your daddy does not love us anymore. He has another woman." That's a lot of for a young kid to deal with.
Yeah, it was the saddest moment in my whole life. I'll never forget that. And my mom was a great mom. she held the family together after he left us. He applied for a divorce, and I went to the judge's chamber with my mother. And the judge called us, me and my father, to come to him. And my mom was too weak to get up to go to the judge. The judge said, "Mr. Harvey, I'm granting you a divorce. The 6 remaining children in the family will remain with their mother, and you will pay in the sum of $42 for child care a month for 6 children and herself." And that was the last penny my dad ever spent on us. And we just divorced him completely from our minds and so forth. I had nothing to do with him after that. And that was the saddest moment of my whole life when that happened.
And it was interesting, too, you mentioned later in the book that you could have gotten, because now you were like the sole supporter of the family, you could have actually gotten a deferment from going to the war.
Yes,
And your mom, like, didn't give it to you, or she knew that you wanted to go in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Well, for a while she held off, wouldn't sign the papers for me to go. See, I was just a sophomore in high school, and I was failing all my subjects because I was trying to hold down 2 jobs to help my mom and my sisters. And it was hard times. It was really bad for us all. But my mom held the rest of us together, and I lived through it.
And then, so your mom knew that you wanted to join the Marine Corps?
Yeah, and she fought me on it. And one day my cousin came home, and I went to the recruiting office with him, and he signed up because he was old enough to sign. And I took the papers home to my mom, and she was at the clothesline hanging up wet clothes to be dried, you know. And I put that paper in front of her. I said, "This is for you to sign. I want you to sign it now because I'm going into the Marine Corps." She laid that wet towel on the basket, walked down there to the end of the line. I'd built her a line for drying clothes, and there was some excess wire, 6-strand wire. She took that thing and twisted it into a long whip-like thing, came back to me, took my left hand, her left hand, and whacked me across the rear, and I made a complete circle around it. And I stopped and glared at her, and I could see that she was shedding tears, the first tears that I'd ever seen her shed. And that broke my heart. And I stood there for a while, and she turned and went into the house. And then I cried hard. And so about a week later, I came home from school, and she handed me a paper that she had signed for me to go into the Marine Corps. And so that was the birth of my Marine Corps.
How old were you?
I was 17.
Okay.
Yeah. I was 17, and I couldn't pass English. And so I quit school and joined the Marine Corps. But
where were you when Pearl Harbor happened? So that was what, a year prior?
No, I was in school, but it was a Sunday day, and Jake Rhodes, my buddy, had a little coop right there, and we had dates, and we called her Big Berthers. The little coop was too small for all of us to sit abreast of each other. So I sat on her lap. I just weighed 118 pounds, and she probably outweighed me by 5 or 6 pounds. And we heard that Pearl Harbor had been attacked, and that was the day that I learned that I was going to be involved in a war because of that age, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
How had you heard about the Marine Corps as opposed to the Army or the Navy?
Well, I wanted to be a paratrooper, and then I thought I'd go into the Army and be a paratrooper. Then I found out that the Marines had paratroopers, so I joined the Marine Corps instead, and I found me a home.
Yeah. So you leave on that train. Your mom tells you, you know, don't be a coward, don't get any tattoos, don't be a drunkard, and come home to us. These are good, basic, fundamental rules for a lot of people, I think, to follow. And you head off on that train to boot camp, which is right here in San Diego, California.
Yes, So I got through boot camp okay. But my big problem, when they lined us up, we fitted out with shoes and clothing and everything. When it came to the shoes right there, they measured me, and they said, "Son, you can't join the Marine Corps because your feet are too small." And I thought, well, gosh, he's not going to send me home, is he, and everything. I wore a size 5.5 shoe, and he said, "We just don't make shoes that small." And so I had an old pair of shoes that had worn out, should have been thrown away. And I play a lot of poker. I knew how to play poker before I knew my ABCs. Well, anyway, I carried a deck of cards around all the time. So when I went Marine Corps, I had to use the whole deck, putting about 3 into my shoes that had holes in them, my civilian shoes that had holes in them. And they finally... One night, I'd always take the top bunk in wherever I went, what barracks I was in, you know. So I put my shoes on the deck under the bunk. The next morning, I woke up, and looked like somebody had taken a car tire and cut out soles for me. The thing was about that thick, you know. So I had a pair of shoes that I could march in anyway. And then when I had to cut down my have dungarees cut down, you know, because it's too big and so forth. And I had a lot of trouble because I was so small. And at one time I was small enough that Ralph Hall, my captain, or my platoon leader, he was the first lieutenant at that time, and Ott Ferris picked me as the runner. And so one night we were sitting around a campfire, and I said, "Why did y'all pick me as a runner?" And they said, "Well, you were so small, so you made a small target, and you were so fast afoot that you could outrun any Jap in the world." So that was the reason I was made a company runner.
So you were saying that your mom, and it's in the book too, it's a great story about your mom bringing you something to boot camp, visiting you and bringing you something to boot camp.
Oh, yeah. Well, it wasn't exactly the boot camp. It was when I came back from overseas and I found out that I was going to be in a demolition man in the assault squad. And the assault squad was composed of 5 men with specials. And I was going to be a demolition man. I was supposed to carry so many pounds of demolition on my back, and on front I would carry my regular pack, you know, and so forth. And so I couldn't handle a rifle, So at first I said, well, we'll try to get you a pistol, because I couldn't handle a rifle with all that weight and so forth. And he said, we're going to get you a pistol. I waited around a week for a pistol, and finally he came out and said, the Marine Corps doesn't have any pistols, any left. And so I was desperate. So I called my mom. I said, Mom, find me a pistol. I'd like to have a Colt, 1911 Colt. And my mom went out and looked all over town. Well, I looked all over San Diego here for a pistol myself, and there just wasn't one to be had, you know. And so I called my mom and told her what I needed, and I sent her the money. I sent her $75 that I'd won in a poker game. I sent that to her, and she went around all over town looking for a pistol. Couldn't find one until she came to a trailer house down close to the railroad tracks with a guy that had a gun shop there. So she went out to the house trailer and knocked on the door, and Mr. Armstrong came out and said, what do you need, ma'am? She said, I need a pistol. What kind of pistol do you need? She said, she took out the piece of paper that I'd written it on, a Colt 45, 1911. And he said, I just happen to have one of those. And she said, how much is it? And he said, $200. And she said, oh, I can't afford that. He said, well, that's all I got. Why do you need such a big pistol? She said, well, my son is in the Marine Corps, and he needs a pistol. And so he said, well, this is the only one I have, but $200. And so she backed it out of the door and went down the road. Mr. Armstrong came down and tapped her. He said, you say your son was in the Marine Corps and needs a pistol? She said, surely they can give him a pistol there. She said, no, they don't have any. And she said, well, come on back, we'll work up a deal. So she walked out with that pistol cleaned of cosmoline, and he had his $75, and she needed to get there as soon as she could, you know. So she went down to the bus station, got on a bus with a paper grocery bag in it with extra clothes, you know, and got on the bus, and 36 hours later, she got to San Diego. Now, she crisscrossed across. In those days, you know, military guys had priority, and she'd be in one place, they would bump her off, let a guy come in, take her place, and she crisscrossed New Mexico and Arizona for 36 hours. Well, we were loading up to go overseas, and Cobber Darts and I were up on the truck with a bunch of sea bags, and Fisher, my sergeant at that time, was sitting in the cab with the driver and everything. So we went through the gate over here at Camp Pendleton, and the gate guard said, is there any Marine up there named Harvey, Fred Harvey? And Cobber woke me up. I was asleep, woke me up and said, hey, they're calling for your names. So I looked over, and I saw my mom look up at me. And I slid off that thing real fast. I came off real fast. Well, after a while, Fisher said, Harvey, we gotta go. I want to let your mom sit in the seat. I'll get up there with y'all. And so we drove downtown, and was looking for a place for her to stay. We couldn't find a place anywhere. I mean, we tried every hotel and so forth. So finally, this is around 12 o'clock at night, and so I went to a policeman. I said, "Sir, can you tell me where we might find a place for my mom to stay, a hotel or a motel or something, you know?" And he said, "Well, I just don't know of any place," and so forth. "I'll tell you what, I'll call my wife. If your mother will stay with her, I'll call her and we'll go out there." And so the wife said, "Yes, bring her out." So he called the office, and the police car came out and drove him to the house. And his wife welcomed us with open arms, you know. And she stayed there 3 different nights, and then I was able to, Fisher would let me off quite a bit of the time, those 3 days that she was here. And then he finally had to put her on the bus, and he wrote a note making it a priority she wouldn't be bumped and anything when she got home. Well, that was a story of how I got my pistol.
And it was shortly thereafter that you headed overseas.
Yes,
And that was on a former cattle ship. Is that right?
That was the first time I went overseas.
Oh, okay. So you came back in between. So that you got the pistol after your first time going overseas.
Yeah, it was the second time I went overseas.
Okay.
But the first time I went over was on the Bloemfontein.
Okay.
You want to hear about the Bloemfontein?
Well, I read about it, and it's a pretty nasty story in many ways.
Oh, that was a nasty ship. It really was. But I thought that's the way it was. You know, I hadn't seen the ocean until I'd gotten in the Marine Corps. And so they put us on the Bloemfontein, and it was in a cattle ship, a Dutch captain, and he was he transferred cattle from Australia over to the Dutch holdings in the South Pacific. Well, when the war broke out, he had just dumped out a load of cattle, and when he found out that it was at war, well, he headed for San Francisco. And when he got to San Francisco, he offered it to the Navy, and the Navy took it, made it into a troop ship. Now, they didn't clean that stuff up very good, you know. They shoveled it out, and they left a lot of stuff, and they just painted over it. Of course, when it started sailing, that ship would buckle and everything, and that cow droppings just everywhere, you know. And the bunks were stacked up 8 high. And I was lucky. I was small enough to get in there without any trouble. A lot of those little guys couldn't get in. And the head, you know, in the Navy and Marine Corps, the bathroom is called the head, you know. The head was just a long shed from the bow of the ship back to the holdings, you know, where the captain stood and so forth. And what had happened, they had made a train. What would we?
Latrine.
A what?
A latrine.
Yeah, right there where water would flow down the thing right there. Then they had a pipe for you to sit on. Well, you just sit on that pipe, and then do your thing and get up and leave, you know. Well, that thing broke down. And so here we were out at sea with no way to dispose of, you know, the droppings. Well, anyway, so the Dutch captain signed his crew to make things on the front of the bow of the ship, and kind of like saddle deals on the side of a horse, you know. You just go up there and drop your pants and sit down on that thing and drop it to feed the fish, you know. Well, I was too bashful to go out there and use that because there were 13 naval nurses on that same ship, and they sit up there, and I held off. I was trying to hold off till dark because I was too embarrassed to go. But finally, I had to go, so I just went up there and dropped my pants like the rest of them did. Well, yeah, you know, when you're floating along there, you're going up and down. First thing you know, your butt is in the water, and it comes back out. And you didn't really need toilet paper because you didn't need them because there wasn't any on there. That was a problem the whole time I was in the Marine Corps overseas was toilet paper. Oh, that was something. But that's the way we traveled there. And when you go through I was seasick. I was seasick all the time. They put me in the sick bay, and for some reason there was a box of Hi-Ho crackers in there. I don't know what it was doing on a troop ship, but there was some on there. And so I'd eat a couple of those every hour, and I'd hide them so nobody else could get them. And we was on that ship for 29 days to get to New Caledonia. And one day the ship broke down. Here we are drifting out there, and we drifted for, probably 30 or 40 hours, you know. And we was taking bets as where we would drift to in South America. and they passed the word out that we were supposed to keep our life belts on at all times and keep your eyes looking out for submarines, because we didn't have any escort. We was just out there by ourselves in a slow cattle ship, and we was in real trouble. And we drifted for 72 hours, and they finally got the engine going again. So here we are going to overseas. We didn't know where we were going, you know. And then we got a scare that there was possibly a Jap submarine in the area. So we pulled into the nearest island we were close to, you know. We pulled in there, and I fell in love with that island. It was Tonga Tapu. And we just went in there to one of these things you see in the movies, you know. And we pulled in that bay and dropped anchor, and here the natives came out paddling canoes, and they had coconut, pineapple, a lot of fruit and stuff. They'd throw them up there to us, and man, we fight for those things. Well, anyway, they came back that night and entertained us on the deck of the ship. We were sitting around there, and they were doing their dances, the hula dances, and it was a beautiful island. I mean, it was beautiful. And I swore right there, I said to myself, Fred Harvey, there's a lot more in this world than Odessa, Texas. And I'm going to see some of it before I die. And so they put on a show, and at last they sung their island song. You know what it was? You Are My Sunshine. And we pulled away from there, and we got started. Then we stopped and went back. Well, what's going on? 6 guys had jumped ship. they went ashore and brought them back. But I didn't think about jumping the ship. If I thought about it, I might have joined them. And so we pulled out and finally got to New Caledonia. We'd been at sea for 29 days. And we was all tickled to finally get there. But that ship was a hell ship, you know. And when we got there, they took us off the ship.
And this is now in New Caledonia.
New Caledonia.
And so you're a couple months out of boot camp at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. And so this is the first place you stop, and you're going to basically, just for people that don't know, you're going to get to New Caledonia and you're going to kind of train and prepare for going out and taking down some islands.
Yeah. Well, there was two reasons we went there. We were going to farm up with the rest of the troops, you know. The 1st Parachute Battalion was already there. In fact, they were involved in Guadalcanal. And so we were going down there to replace the guys. So I went to the 1st Parachute Battalion. They were up 60 miles from the base that we came in on. I can't remember the base that we landed at, or the port we landed at, but it was the capital of New Caledonia, and the parachute battalions were stationed out about 60 miles from Noumea. Yeah, Noumea was the capital of that place.
And then once you got, is that where you met that where you joined up, you're saying, with your parachute company?
Yeah, Yeah, I was assigned to the 1st Parachute Battalion.
And did you, if I remember correct, did you go to Guadalcanal at this point?
No, we went later. When we went up to our first action together after Guadalcanal was we were supposed to go to Bella La Vela and thing. So on our way up there, we stopped off at Guadalcanal.
Okay.
And that's after Guadalcanal had been secured, you know. And so they let us scrimmage. We went up to find some of the old guys that had escaped. Japanese had escaped, and we didn't see anything, so we didn't get to shoot any Japs. So we were there a couple of days, and we got up for chow one morning just about before sunup and everything. I was up the front of the line. I'd always managed to get to the front of the line.
For chow?
Yeah, for chow.
Yeah, you mentioned throughout the book that you're a guy that liked your chow.
Oh, I love chow. I was trying to catch up with the hunger I had during the Depression. Well, anyway, we was in line there waiting to go in to get chow, you know. And then I heard a lot of laughing and carrying on back to the line, so I ran down to see what the action was, you know. And there's 3 bedraggled Japanese had just come out of the line, out of the jungle, and got in line. and an officer came down there and that could speak Japanese, and they said they were hungry and everything. So they took them up there and fed them. And they kept them there, I guess, as long as they needed them. They was washing pots and pans and doing work there when we left and so forth.
They got off light. And so as you were preparing to go, now you're working, and you had a couple of guys that you mentioned in the book. You know, I'll start with the first one. I'm going to mention 3 of them. Major Fagan, Fagan, is that how you say
Fagan,
it?
yeah.
Fagan, Major Fagan. He sounds like one tough customer.
He was tough. I mean, I was scared. I'd see him coming down, you know, the trail or anything like that. I'd jump in the jungle, because I was scared of him. Well, everybody was scared of him because he was tough. He just drove us. He found out the Japanese had marched with full packs in a 24-hour period, marched 39 miles. He said, we're going to beat that. And we marched 50 miles with full packs there on New Caledonia. And we would walk up the hills and trot down the hills that came down there. and we went 50 miles. And I don't know whether it's any kind of record book or anything, but we was proud of it.
Yeah.
So forth.
I don't know if it's a record book either, but I know it hurt.
Yeah.
Now you also you tell a couple stories in the book about him. But he had no problem putting people on bread and water.
Oh, no problem, no problem. In fact, I was put on bread and water. I had a buddy there that was went through the parachute platoon with me right there, and he nearly got us killed and everything. I won't give him his name, but he passed away several years ago, but I don't want to say anything.
We don't want to incriminate his actions.
Well, he, when we was going through parachute school, his name was, well, I'll tell you his name, last name. His name was Harmon. So when we lined up alphabetically and everything we did, well, he was always right behind me. So when we went to parachute school, we wound up together, because of our names being real close to one another. Well, anyway, now, when we jumped, the Marine Corps jumped from the plane, we dove out head first. Their theory was that when you jump out and that parachute opens right there, you kind of swing with it right there. Well, the Army jumped them out feet first and came down and so forth. So we jumped out head first. While we were training there out here in Camp Gillespie, that's where the parachute school was. And we lined up and to make our first jump. Well, Harmon was behind me. Well, in the plane we called it the Blue Goose. Now we had to borrow that from the Navy because the Marine Corps didn't own any planes itself. So we used the Blue Goose. So they took us out there in a truck, the guys that had volunteered to go into the parachute school. And that truck driver drove us out there, and the barracks and the offices and everything was on the top of this hill, and below was the runway, and that's where we jumped into that area right there. That truck driver drove up there and stopped real fast. He said, "They're fixing to jump. You guys want to watch?" And so we all jumped out of the truck. There's about 10 or 15 of us, jumped out of the truck and watched them. It flew over. Man, here they come diving out. One of them was coming down fast. He was flailing like this. His parachute didn't open. And so just before he hit the deck, that parachute opened. He had to pull out his reserve chute. Now the reserve chute was on the front, and it didn't have a pilot chute on it. So when you pull a ripcord, you're supposed to pull out that silk yourself. Well, it wasn't silk; it was nylon. Well, he was pulling that out. Just he got it filled out. He hit the deck, and a Jeep was on its way down there, and they put him in that Jeep, put a parachute on him, got him on the plane. The plane went up there, out he came again, and that truck driver said, "Any of you guys want to go back to boot camp?" And 2 guys got back on the truck and went back. And I thought seriously about joining them, And
yeah, that's not a good initiation into parachute jumping, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, we had to pack our own chutes. We learned how to pack the chutes, and every step you took at parachute school, you had to be running. If you weren't running, an officer or an NCO would catch you, you were in trouble, So every step we took, we learned how to pack chutes, ran up and down. I got where I could pack a chute in 12 minutes. Well, one day they said, "You're going to pack a chute today and you're going to jump tomorrow." And I said, I better take a little bit more time. So it took me 30 minutes to do that one. Well, that night, what was that Indian's name? But was it
Ira Hayes.
Ira Hayes. Okay. He was in my platoon. You heard of Ira Hayes. His hip raised the flag on the eagle. He was real quiet. and there was another Indian in there with him. And that night before we jumped, that guy jumped off and hollered gung-ho, and broke both of his ankles. So that ended his parachute. But he was a good Marine. He was quiet, he never said much. And I'd talk to him, because my mom was a Comanche Indian, and I had some Indian blood, and I'd tell him that, and we became close friends. But he was so quiet, he's just a great guy, but he just quiet. Well, the history of what he did, what happened to the poor guy.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we came out, and that first jump we made the jump. And when I came out, I dove out. When my chute opened, I was standing on another chute below me. Well, it was Harmon. He should have been above me because he was coming out there. Well, we didn't think much about it, I just thought that's what his jumping was like. Well, the next day, we jumped again, and we came up. We were tangled together. And their chutes, when they're slanting up like that, air was going up too fast, when holding the chute. And when we hit, man, it was like a ton of bricks hitting, man, it hurt and everything because that chute wasn't able to, those chutes weren't able to hold us up. So we hit the ground pretty hard. So the jump masters and the guy on the deck watching thing, they said, what happened? And I don't know. They didn't ask anything of Harmon, It was always me looking at, Well, anyway, in fact, they was looking at me because I didn't even have boots on there. One time, I said, where's your boots? I said, y'all don't have any that'll fit me. So they finally got me a pair, a 6 size, and told me to wear 4 pair of socks, and those were the first boots I had. Well, back to Harmon. Well, the next time we jumped, I came out bruised up and everything. When we jumped, my chute, the shroud lines had tangled up in my boot, So I whipped out the K-bar knife and cut those 2 strands of rope, to let me down. Just before I hit the ground, I got my feet down first, They come running over to me, and what is going on there? What's happening? I don't know. And so what had happened when my parachute, when I jumped out or dove out of the thing right there, I was facing the plane, and my static line was playing out between my legs. And so that's where my foot got tangled up in the shroud lines. Man, they came up there and they decided I was too light to be in a parachute, And so the sergeant over there at the loft where we packed our chutes, he and the officer were talking. They said, "Well, he's just too light," and I was standing there talking. I said, "Y'all can't kick me out. I want to stay in this outfit. I want to stay in it." And so that sergeant, he said, "Why don't we put him in a Army-Navy canopy?" Now, the Army-Navy canopy was only 26 feet diameter, and the ones we used, the nylon, the ones we used were 28, just a bigger canopy and everything. So this guy took an Army-Navy parachute, took it out and put it on all the carriage, I forget what they call it, where you folded your chute and put it on there. And so here I am with a parachute, made out of silk instead of nylon. And silk reacts a lot faster than nylon does. So when that chute opened, I got a pretty good kick out of it. Well, when we came out, and that day we were going to jump with weapons, and so they gave us all a rising gun. You ever heard of a rising gun?
No.
It was about as worthless as a grease gun, so we called it a grease gun. It was a terrible weapon. They outlawed them in the military right quick. Well, anyway, I had one of those, and when I went out the door, Harmon hit me and knocked that rising gun down, and it went down and stuck in the dirt. And this was our fourth jump, and the sergeant said they were considering just really drop me, send me back to boot camp to be assigned somewhere else, you know. I, with tears in my eye, begged them to let me stay, you know. Well, and then the sergeant said, I'm going to go up tomorrow and watch and see what is happening. And so he went up there and found out what was happening. Well, here, we're coming down this white line in the fuselage of the plane, and then the white line was right there leading out the door. So we were supposed to come down and make a sharp turn and dive out. Well, I was coming down there and going out the proper way. Harmon was coming down there, and he was cutting across, and he was going through the door at the same time I was, and it was knocking me against the side over there. And he was just knocking me out. Shooter was opening before mine was opening. And so we got that straightened out. And that wasn't the only trouble I had with Harmon, but that's a different story, or maybe I shouldn't bring it up here. So
you actually talk about when you did finally get your first jump, everything went good, and you said, I had never made first string in any sport because of my size, but when they pinned those wings on my chest and shoved a rifle into my hands, I'd at last made first string. With that rifle in my hands, size no longer seemed relevant. I had made the team and found a home. The Marine Corps filled all my dreams and all my needs. Harmon actually ended up getting you in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? While you were in New Caledonia.
Yeah. Well, I won't go into the pink house, but I do in the book, don't I?
I don't know.
Our day off was Wednesday. 1st Battalion got Wednesday off. They didn't let us all off at the same time because they didn't want another Pearl Harbor type thing, because the Japs were still on the offensive at that time. So he got where he would go down there every Wednesday, and he fell in love with one of those girls, and she fell in love with him. Well, he went in there and he didn't get the bus, but last truck going back to base, and he didn't get back in time. So he had to hitchhike. I don't know how he got there, but he got there about an hour after roll call and everything. So when he showed up, well, Fagan just put him on 5 days bread and water.
Fagan don't play around.
Yeah. Well, when you would buy something over there from the PX, you couldn't go in and buy one bar of candy or one can of beans or anything like that. You had to buy a whole box. So on his third day, I went over and got me a Joe Boy. Now, Joe Boy was a non-chocolate. You couldn't have chocolate candy in the tropics because it'd melt, So they had this nougat covered with peanuts, and it's called Joe Boy. So I went by there one night, and I opened up, and I was eating one of them, and I hollered at him through the barbed wire thing. He was in a tent, and it was kind of in a clearing in the woods, He said, Harvey, throw me one of those things. I haven't had anything but bread and water for 3 days now. I said, no, I'm not going to throw you. That's against the rules. Oh, come on, please. I would do it for you. Just come on. So I looked around, took 2 of them out, and threw them a little "Corporal of the guard." Fagan had seen me. Well, he came over and he said, "Put this guy in there." And Ott Ferris happened to be the corporal of the guard at that time. And he said, "Well, we can't. We're all packed up. We don't have. There's just one bunk.
Cot.
What thing you?
Cot.
Cot in there, and the rest of them are all packed and ready to go." And he said, "There's no place for him to sleep." He said, "Well, take that guy out and put this guy in there." And so the next day, I'm sitting there, and I'd already had a couple of loaves of bread and water. He came by with a box of candy. I said, "Come on, throw me one of those things." He said, "No, that's against the rules. I don't want to get in trouble."
Oh.
So he never did throw one over to me.
Cold-blooded.
Yeah.
Now, you were going to get sort of written up for that, and Lieutenant Hall, who you had a lot of respect for, I'm going back to the book here. So now you're checking in with Lieutenant Hall, and he's supposed to write you up and put this in your permanent record.
Yeah.
And he says, "Harvey," he said with a document in hand, "I was ordered to write you up, but I can't put it in your records as all our records have been stowed away to remain here. I'll have to carry this paper with me, and it will surely get lost in the jungle before we get back to civilization." Again, I got a knowing smile and a pat on the back. "Now get out of here and forget what has happened. Get your gear in order. I think we're taking a boat ride." I gave him the smartest salute possible and said, "Thank you, sir. I appreciate what you've done for me." I think I might have skipped to my tent filled with a deep joy and the deliciousness of being a Marine. I left my troubles behind me and soon got to feel the thrill of combat. I realized soon after, in the heat of battle, that the harsh, demanding training of that Major Richard Fagan, Sergeant Ott Ferris, and Lieutenant Ralph F. Hall put us through paid off. We performed well under fire. Ferris and Fagan received wounds in the Battle of Iwo Jima. Lieutenant Hall died in the Battle of Iwo Jima. I shed bitter tears when I heard the news of his death. He was a great Marine. At Iwo, Fagan earned the Navy Cross. As we fought for Bougainville, Sergeant Ferris did some amazing things for which he received the coveted Silver Star. Later, at the Battle for Iwo, he earned the Bronze Star and Purple Heart medals. Then he went on to win his second Silver Star and Purple Heart during the Korean War. Heck, this guy hung around to fight in Vietnam in the 1960s. A Marine's Marine, I found serving with him a great honor, one of the high points of my life. Even today, 70 plus years later, we get together from time to time. What do we talk about? Of course, the war and our buddies of that bygone era. So I thought that was just a great leadership story about how Lieutenant Hall just said, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna shred this document," and it never happened.
Yeah.
And then you move to your first. Was it your first combat? Was being in Bougainville?
No, Bella La Vella was the first one. Yeah.
And what was going into Bella La Vella? What was it? Vella La Vella?
Bella La Vella. Well, we were island hopping over there. What we would do would evade an island, put in an airstrip and everything, and to hop to the next island. Because when we were through, we nearly vacated an old the airfield that we put in and everything. And so Bella La Vella was one of those stages and everything. And across the bay there, I think is something like 13 miles or something, was Kolombangara. Now that was just an island just sticking up, volcanic island just sticking up in the ocean. And it was, the Jap occupied it. And but we took Bella La Vella and put in an airstrip there. We landed there, and that was when I had my first taste of action. We moved in to the jungle, and the Seabees were supposed to follow us in, and start building there. Well, the Seabees was a tough outfit. They were getting ahead of us. And we'd had to show them back. So they ask us to put snipers on their tractors, and that's what we did and everything. But then when we were moving out of the beach, well, we had sent out on patrol because we hadn't, when we invaded, we didn't run into any Japs. But we found that there were some up there, so we were going to go up and attack them before they could get down and work over the Seabees that were building the airstrip, you know. And so it was so hot and the jungle was so thick, we had to have guys using matchets, you know, to chop our way through there. Well, we'd last only about 10 minutes using those choppers to get through there. They're just big blades, you know, just used just to chop through the vines. Well, we were staggered. A guy was here, I was here, and another guy was here, and we were working our way through it. And the Jap Nambu opened up on us, and this Jap was up in a tree, and he shot, and it killed these two guys that were in this line over here, and I was over here, so he didn't get it, all three of us. Well, anyway, then he went after me, and I just jumped under the shreds and the brush and everything, and I just crawled from one place or another. And I don't think he could see me, but he was probably see the leaves and branches working. He was firing at me and everything. And so a big guy had an A4 machine gun. You know, that's an air-cooled 30 caliber weapon. And he had an asbestos glove, and he was big enough and strong enough that he could fire short bursts at a time with it and everything. So he said, "Harvey, what tree is that guy in?" I said, "That big one over here on the left." He said, "That doesn't mean a thing. They're all big and are on the left and right." And so I said, "Fire at one of them right there, and I'll give you directions where to go." So that guy fired at me, and they saw where he was shooting right there. So this guy, I wish I could think of his name, this big guy. I admired him because he was so big and strong. But he just saturated that thing with that A4 machine gun. And sure enough, here came a Jap hanging out. He had a rope around his foot, and that Nambu machine gun, that's the first Jap weapon I'd seen. That's the first time I'd been shot at, you know. So I remember the Nambu real well. Well, anyway, that was my first action, and man, I hated those Jap machine guns. But if I had to go to war right now, I would get me a Jap Nambu machine gun. And there's a picture of it right there. Yeah. That weapon was something else. Had a magazine that hold 20 shells and boot. And I ran across another one at Iwo Jima, and that's another story. And
then you guys pretty much mopped up that first operation, and there wasn't too much resistance?
No, there wasn't too much resistance.
And then you moved on. After that, was that when you headed to Bougainville? Was that the next place you hit?
We went to Bougainville after that.
You got an interesting story about Bougainville that kind of, I think, is might be worth talking about a little bit, because it's kind of shows how, you know, war is not always what it's made out to be in the movies. So here we're going. You were actually, speaking of toilet paper, and in this particular situation, you were just getting done. You'd gone to relieve yourself by a little house, and then you hear the order. I heard the order, "Move out on the double." As I stood between the house and the banyan tree, buckling my belt, something in the vague, misty light caught my eye. I stood in rapt amazement as a guy came diligently down the tree. I could see that he had only a piece of cloth around his waist. When he reached the bottom, he bent forward as if to pick up a sandal. I watched in utter wonderment as this scene played out before me, just a little guy. When he straightened up, I stepped up and brought my rifle stock across the back of his head with a glancing blow. He turned as he crumpled and landed fully on his back. I looked down and, to my horror, found myself looking at a female instead of a male. Stunned and shaken by my act, I choked on a sob and trembled uncontrollably. What had I done? As I stood there bathed in pity and compassion, all hell broke loose. The shatter and clatter of small arms fire broke the silence. Trying hard to choke back the sobs, I raced to join the firefight, glad to leave that pitiful, pathetic scene and act. An outnumbering force pinned us down all day. Although desperately busy during this time, my thoughts kept going back to the base of that banyan tree. At midday, our ammunition ran low. The sergeant ordered me back to the rear to find more. I veered from a direct path to the beach to pass by that tree of infamy. I found neither her nor her body. I quickly ran around the tree and under the house to no avail. I ventured up the steps to look inside the house. Inside it looked like an infirmary or aid station, but empty. I hoped that I had only stunned her and she had walked away from the area. After the incident, I gave a great deal of thought to that lady in the coconut grove. Definitely of Oriental heritage, I wondered her purpose there. I thought of several possibilities. She could have served as a nurse in the Japanese military or a resident of the island brought there by the late Lever Brothers Soap Company to work in the coconut groves. Also, she might come from Korea, one of the many Korean women kidnapped by the Japs to serve as prostitutes for their military. No matter the reason, I hope and pray that she survived the blow to her head and the war. In my lifespan, I've stored many, many items in my arsenal of memories. The memory of that day so very long ago rests among my most vivid. The memorable events on that lonely beach on the far side of planet Earth have not dimmed over time nor distance. It all took place because I crawled beneath a house. I think I lost the last vestige of the little boy within me that day.
Yeah, that was really tough on me, you know. I remembered my sisters, you know, and thought how terrible it would be if they were hit like that. It stuck with me all these years, you know. I remember that little lady in that jungle. That was another story. There, we were sitting up there. What was the name of that beach? Corey Beach. We'd heard that the Japs were fixing to come up there, so they sent the 1st Battalion up there and a company of raiders up there. We went up there, left our base at about 12 o'clock, and it was 12 miles up the island. And when we invaded it during the night, we waited until it began to get light. Well, there was a Japanese officer came in, walked into the group. I didn't see him because I was out on the flank. But it was a Japanese officer. He came down there hollering instructions and everything. And he didn't know it was Marines that had come ashore. He thought it was because they were building up to invade that area where we were building the airstrips, you know. And so they shot him dead right there, and then all hell broke loose because we were outnumbered 10-1. And when I finished with doing my job and hurting that little girl, well, I ran to catch up with the bunch, you know. Well, the first guy I caught up with was Whitey Maines, and he was in my company and everything. So we went on up there, and we was on the very end of the flank there. And we both had Johnson rifles, and that's all we had to protect that flank with. And that's the weak part of the line. And Hall came up there, I'd say about 9 or 10 o'clock. He said, what are y'all doing down here? You're supposed to be up there with us. And they'd gone on up there, and we worked B Company. We were with B Company, and A Company was in the middle of the group, you know. And so he just said, well, stay here, and I'll get an A4 down here to protect this flank. You know, the flank is a weak point on the line. He said, y'all protect it. Well, it was a coconut grove that we hit into, and they had a road behind that coconut grove. And those Japs were using that to haul material up there to invade that airstrip. And so here, Whitey and I were on the flank there, and that's where we were protected. Well, they began to send planes down there. They were strafing that road that we were strung out along, you know. And those planes were coming hard and fast. If they hadn't come up there to protect us, they'd have wiped us out, because there's a whole regiment of Japs there fixing to invade that deal right there. And those planes were coming just one after another. And they didn't even bother to put up their landing gears. They just left them down and would come along strafe, and they would drop bombs along the way. And we were on the very end. We were afraid they was going to start their shooting before they got to. We'd get out there and wave at them right there, and they'd go by us and wave at us and start strafing. And we were there all day long. And the commander down at the air base told them that they're sending up crafts to take us off. And Fagans answered, no, we're not going to be the first Marines to be pushed off of a beach. We were scheduled to be taken off at 7 o'clock, and that's when we will start boarding those boats. So we were there all day long, and it was a long day. And Hall came up there a few times, and we had Johnson rifles. We didn't have the N1 rifle. We had Johnson rifles, a 30 caliber cylinder-fed thing. They didn't use clips in them. And I thought it was the best weapon that I had in the war beside the Nambu. And Hall would bring us ammunition up there, and then he finally come up there late in the afternoon. He said, you guys make this last, because we're nearly out of ammunition. And so here we were, and we couldn't do anything till 7 o'clock. So ships, Higgins boats were out there circling, waiting for 7 o'clock, I guess, because then Ott Ferris came up there, and he said, now we're going to be taking off, and we'll start at 7 o'clock, and that's about an hour and a half from now. And the guys next to you, they're in Company B now because of the mix-up, you know, Whitey Maines and I was involved in. Well, anyway, Ott Ferris told us, said, when these guys over here, they're going to leave, and when they leave, they're going to holler and let you know that they're leaving. You count to 50 as fast as you can, and then get down to the beach. Okay, so we sit there, we hear these boats coming in and taking off and shooting and everything on it right there. I said, Whitey, gosh, what time is it? We should be getting out of here and everything. And Whitey said, hollered over at those other guys right there, and they didn't answer us. So I walked over there. They'd already left and didn't call it out. So here we were, only two guys left on the beach, I guess, and we started running. Well, I was pretty fast, so I took Whitey's Johnson rifle, and I carried both of them down there, and I still beat him down to the to the Higgins boat. Well, it wasn't a Higgins boat, it was a
LCVP.
It was what?
LCVP.
LCVT. It's heavier than the Higgins boat, and it's all steel right there. So here we are running down there and hollering, don't leave, and everything. Well, Odd Ferris was on the deck, and the ramp on that LSV was at about a 45-degree angle because that was taking shots from the Japs. And Odd Ferris stayed down there. Captain Hayes, he's a captain by this time, he was trying to hold us up and everything, and Fagan was on that boat. And this little coxswain on the thing right there said, we're moving out right there. We're leaving right there. Fagan said he fought his way through those guys down there and put that pistol in that kid's hand. I said, put this back on and blow your bleep head off. So he put it back on there. And the guys that are around there, they was telling us about what happened. And so here we are running and so forth. And I got down there and Odd Ferris took those two rifles and threw them up there into the boat. And Hall got them to lower it a little bit right there, and then Odd Ferris took us by our foot, and heaved us up there, and Hall pulled us on the end. And I got up there and here, old Whitey Mange finally got there, and that's how we got off the island. And,
but you held the line until 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
As you were ordered.
Yeah. Yeah. It took about 30 to 40 minutes, I guess, to get everybody off there, and we were the last two to get off the island. And I'd been on the beach before at night, and I didn't want to be on the beach again in Japanese territory.
Now, once you got back on the boat, or you got back out, now the next thing to do is prepare for Iwo?
Well, we got back. They took us out. We got back on a destroyer and was heading back in to Empress Augustus Bay. That was on Bougainville. That's where we invaded to set up a airstrip, to attack New Guinea. But anyway, we got the word. I forget exactly when he got it, that breaking up the paratroopers, we was coming back to the States.
Oh, okay.
And so we got back to the States and was integrated into the 5th Division.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting that this is when you told the whole story about your mom coming to bring you 45, this is when this is now happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
That one.
And did you guys just sailed back to America?
Yeah, we came on back to America. We was on Liberty ships.
Okay.
And they got us back to Pendleton, and we got a little leave. I don't know how long it was. It might have been 30-day leave, and we started forming up in the 5th Division. And that's when when we got back, I had what they call the crud, I broke out all over my body. It's just like having an athlete's foot on your whole body. Mm-hmm. And so they brought us back, and another story there I might throw in here. We were stationed over there at Camp Pendleton, and we lined up one morning to go into chow, It was still about half dark, and we were standing there, and Odd Ferris is out in front, and there's a group come marching up there. Turned out to be women. And Odd Ferris said, "Well, man, this man's outfit is going to pot." we have dogs in there, and then we have this group in here and everything. Now we got women in here. He's just shaking his head. And we heard a guy up here said, "Fire 2 for effect." Another guy down here hollered back, "Bam, bam." And those women nearly broke ranks, going after those guys. And I found out what BAM meant. That meant broad-ass Marines, and they didn't go for that. So they just wanted to break ranks and come after them. But that was when I first found out that there were women in the Marine Corps.
And so now you're preparing, at this point, you're preparing to go back overseas. You're with the 5th Marines?
Yeah,
and
5th Division.
Or, sorry, 5th Division.
We was in the 26th Marines.
Got it. And is this when you met Basilone back here in California?
Yeah, his group was over there at the chow line one time, and several of the guys said, "There's Basilone, there's Basilone." Of course, he was my hero too, So just as soon as we got there to line up to go into the chow hall, I snuck over and I said, "Sir, can I shake your hand?" He certainly got there and shook my hand and went back. And that was my experience with Basilone. Now, Cobber Darch had told me quite a bit about Basilone because he was about, how far did he say he was?
30 yards.
30 yards from Basilone when Basilone was earning his Congressional Medal of Honor. He was the first enlisted man to be awarded the Medal of Honor in the Marine Corps in World War II. And then, he came back. He was in parades and bond drives and so forth. And he had it made, but he wanted to get back to the Marine Corps and work with the Marines groups again. So he joined up and came back, and he got killed at Iwo Jima.
Now wasn't and we'll get to that for sure. Wasn't did I read that Cobber was actually Chesty Puller's runner?
Yeah,
in was that in Guadalcanal?
Guadalcanal, yeah. He was talking about Guadalcanal all the time, And I'd never heard of Chesty Puller until Cobber started telling about it and everything. And Cobber loved that. All the Marines loved old Chesty Puller. And I'd like to have served under him, but I served under some good guys. Fagan was one of them. He was, he wasn't loved like Chesty Puller was, but he was an efficient leader of men right there.
And then so you're back home in America for how long are you back home for, getting ready to head back over?
Well, let's see. It wasn't too long, They, I had to go over there. I told you I had to go to the hospital and be treated for, we called it Chinese crud, and it was just breaking out, kind of like, I always thought it was kind of like athlete's foot all over their whole body. And the only treatment, they'd put some kind of blue medicine on us and everything. And so I was over here in the Balboa Hospital for nearly a month before I was released from there, before I got rid. There was a lot of us in that same position,
And then back on another ship to head back overseas?
Well, we trained over here for a couple of months, and then we was trained up to go overseas, and we make practice invasion of one of the little islands off of here, and we invaded it, practicing, and when we got there, we lined up on the beach, and we kept sitting there waiting to be told to move on in or something like that. We sat there and everything. Finally, the officer came on and told us, said, "Hey, we're going back on the ships. We're heading overseas again." And so we went back aboard ship and went over here, came over here to Camp Pendleton and started getting ready to go back overseas again. And that's when I asked my mother to find me a pistol, and that's when she came over.
And then what, you do more training in Camp Taro? That's the big island of Hawaii?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The
So your
camp
next...
was called Camp Taro. So we trained there. And that's when I was assigned to an assault squad. And I was a demolition guy in that thing. And that was quite an experience. And let's see. Then we trained and got ready to go to Iwo. And while we were training there at Camp Tarawa on the Big Island, you know, they'd line us up every Wednesday, and give us 2 cans of Lucky Lager beer. Well, I didn't drink right there, but Carver loved that beer. And so I would give my 2 to him, and he would take and hide those and drink his 2 with the boys, you know. And he swore me to secrecy. Don't you tell anybody that I got to. So when he hit the island of Iwo Jima, he was carrying 14 cans of beer. Well, anyway, on the way over there...
Actually, there's a picture in your book, and you got him with a little demo satchel on, but you say there's no demo in that satchel, it's all beer.
Yeah, it's beer. And he threw away his gas mask and had 4 cans of beer in that gas mask.
Oh, that's what it was, gas mask container.
Bag, you know. Well, anyway, we heard on the ship, we listened to Tokyo Rose. You know, we liked to listen to her because she played good music, you know, and she's supposed to be breaking our morale down, but she was helping our morale. Well, she said, well, I hear that the Marines, she always said, well, I heard that the little Marines are going to be hitting one of our islands soon. And she said, they better bring their gas mask. And we heard that, you know. And I said, Carver, what you going to do? I'm going to shoot you. And so they didn't use gas on us, thank goodness.
Did you, when do you find out, back then, when did you find out, hey, the target is Iwo Jima, that's where you're going? When did you start getting that briefing and know where you're actually heading? Was that once you're on board the ships?
Yeah, we were on the board ship before we got aboard ship, and we sailed around, and we went over and made a couple of practice landings in those islands in Hawaii, you know. And so we went ashore. We anchored out at Pearl Harbor, you know, and they gave us 3 or 4 hours leave off the ships, you know. So there's a group of us together. We was down in town here in Hawaii. This is not Hawaii, though, is it?
Close enough.
Anyway, we were all down there, and one of the guys in my group was walking around and gawking at everything, you know, on the island. And this guy named Lucas that was in my group when we was walking around, he looked up. He said, there's my cousin over there. And so we went across the street, and it was Lucas, his cousin, you know. What was his name?
Jack Lucas.
Jacqueline Lucas, you know. And so he stayed with us and walking around there and everything. And we said, we got to go back to the ship. And so we went back to our ship, and Jacqueline Lucas was still with us. And when he went aboard, we got aboard, he went in, checked in. He was on there about 3 days out, I said, I was talking to the other Lucas, you know.
So was he a civilian? Was the cousin a civilian, or was he another Marine? Or
he was another Marine.
Oh,
Jocko
okay.
Lucas was another Marine.
He received
And so he just went aboard with us. And he was there for about 3 days. And I said, you better take your cousin over there and tell him that he's not aboard this ship where he's supposed to be with his outfit. He was going to be a replacement in a 1st Division. But he wound up in the 5th Division. What was it?
Well, in the 26th Marines?
Yeah, he was in the 26th Marines with us. And he got hurt. He threw himself on a hand grenade or 2 hand grenades and saved him, his buddies, you know. And he got the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Hmm.
You've probably seen or heard of him because he was from Mississippi. I forget the name of the town. And I was going over to see this guy, and he was in Georgia. And I went through that town, and I got past it. So I said, I'll just go back there and see old Lucas. And so I turned around. As I turned around, was going back, I heard on the radio that he had passed away during the night. And that was last I seen or heard of him, you know.
Then, so you finish up your training in Hawaii. Now, is your next stop going to be Iwo?
Yeah, Iwo, yeah. Uh-huh.
Did you guys know, did the intelligence that you got paint the picture that Iwo was going to be a really, really hard fight? Did you guys know that going in?
No, we didn't. We had no idea what was just another island. But when it got light and I looked around, saw all those battleships and just.
So you weren't any more nervous for that? You just thought, I'm going to go do what I've done the last few times?
No, I was scared to death.
Fair enough.
Well, you know, Ott Ferris and Captain Hall, I was their runner, and I was telling them before I'd ever seen any action, I said, I don't know how it'll be when we see action. I'm afraid I'll be scared to death and everything. And Captain Hall said, that's what you want to be. You want to be scared to death. He said, you should be scared half to death. And, you know, there's no meaning to that, being scared half to death, because I was just scared half to death a lot of times, you know, and I'm still alive. But they said, when you're scared, when fear takes over, it dumps adrenaline into your brain and to your muscles, and you react and everything. And I know that's what happened to me, because when I got hurt, I knew what was going on and knew what I had to do, but I was still as scared as I could be. And that's what saved me, I think.
Had you already been wounded at this point before Iwo? Were you wounded in any of the other?
Oh no,
So you're still as lucky as they come, right? At this point.
Yeah, I wasn't wounded at all. Now Carver had been wounded before we hit Iwo. He had been wounded at Guadalcanal, and he got. That night that Barcelona did his thing, and he was about 30 or 40 yards from Barcelona on that line, you know, and the shell hit him, so they took him off. And he had, a lot of those guys got malaria, and he had malaria real bad, and they took him to Australia. And there was a ship there going back, and he was so with that wound that they hadn't been able to treat it because the Navy took off with all the medical gear and everything. So he actually didn't see a doctor until he got back to Australia. And so he got back to the States, and he wouldn't take a discharge. And they sent a corpsman back with him, you know. He was put on a merchant ship that was going back. It wasn't a Navy ship at all. It was a merchant ship that was going back. And that corpsman said, Carver, they're sending you home to die, and they're going to discharge you. And so Carver, he said he didn't know whether to believe that corpsman or not, but they sent him up to Tillamook, Oregon, and they had a balloon station up there. You know, they put big balloons up in the air on cables, you know, to protect areas, you know, military areas that the Japanese would probably shoot if they tried to invade us. So he got in with Bill Cross up there at that time, and a guy named Horsefly, I can't think of his name, but he's from Wichita Falls, and we nicknamed him Horsefly. He was always talking about horses. Well, anyway, they were up there guarding a naval base at Tillamook, Oregon, and they was trying to get back to the Fleet Marines, you know, and they wouldn't send them. So they was doing things that they shouldn't be doing. They wrecked a Jeep, and that brought it to a head, and they said, you're going back to a rifle company. So that's the way he got back in to a rifle company.
Yeah, that's where you want those guys that are out wrecking Jeeps. Put them right back in a rifle company.
Yeah. Well, that was when I was put in the hospital where the Chinese crud and lost contact with my outfit and so forth. And I wound up with Nails Copeland in the barracks over there that was nearly empty. And so I went over and checked in, and Copeland was the sergeant in charge. And he was the only guy in the whole barracks. And I said, where is everybody? He said, well, they just emptied out. We were waiting to fill up again. He said, just go down there and find a bunk anywhere in the inn. I said, well, what room do you want me to be in? Well, the lower floor. They said, there's not 3 or 4 guys down there anyway. Just take any bunk you want, you know. So I fooled around there and ate supper and everything, and got in the bunk, hung my uniform on the end of the bunk on a hanger, and I was sound asleep. And about 10 o'clock, lights went on, all these guys were hollering and singing and everything right there. I said, you guys knock it off and turn out that light. Who said that, big boy? Who said that? Well, I said, I get those lights turned off. And here he comes over, where are you? Where are you? So he come down there, he was going to fight me. So I jumped off that bunk. I was mad enough to fight anybody. So here he come. He was not much bigger than I was, you know, because he'd been hurt, you know, and everything. And he saw my uniform, and I had my ribbons on there and everything. Hey, you're a combat Marine. Welcome aboard. So he said, come on over here. We got some sandwiches and some beer and so forth. Come on over here and join us. I said, I'll eat a sandwich, so I don't drink beer. And so that's how I met Carver Dart. And we'd go on Liberty together, and they liked their booze, and Horsefly liked his booze too, and he drank pretty heavily. So to wind up, I didn't drink, so I happened to take care of Horsefly, and they had dates, and he and Cobber and Cross would go off to somewhere, and I had to take care of Horsefly. Well, we were out in Olive Grove or someplace here in close to San Diego, I guess. Well, it's closer to L.A., I guess. And I couldn't find a taxi or anything, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't find a place to stay with him and everything. So there was an all-night movie going on, showing porno films. So we went in there, and we both went to sleep. Woke up the next morning, films were still showing, so I got him out. We finally got home, or back to camp, and that was my experience with Horsefly. Horsefly was killed at Ewo, and Cobber and Cross were wounded too. Let's see, in the book I told how Cobber was wounded, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. That's
You want to hear that now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you hit the beach at. I mean, let's just take it from you. You hit the beach at Ewo.
Yeah.
And I mean, you weren't the landing at Ewo relative to some of the other landings that the Marine Corps had done at this point was.
Well,
I mean, what was your?
Well, before Ewo, the Japanese always tried to stop us before we got to the beach. At Ewo, they let us get on the beach,
right.
And that's when they really opened up with everything they had, you know, and it was more effective than trying to stop us before we got to the beach. Well, we were on the beach, and a lot of officers and NCOs were killed, you know, off the beach. So here we are laying on the beach, and it sloped, and guys were laying down on that thing, and when those mortar shells were coming in like raindrops. When they'd hit, and the explosion goes out and up, you know. Well, it was all laying on the ground, and that was just inviting those shells to come in close to us, you know. And so Cobber said, "We got to get off this beach." So we started trying to hollering, "Get off the beach, run!" So we ran, man. I ran, and first thing you know, I'm on the beach on the other side. That's when I realized we were on a little island, and so we got over there, and I heard that Hall had been killed on the boat, and I cried because I loved that man. I mean, he would treat me like a son, and Ott Ferris had been wounded too, but Hall got off right on the beach, and one of those shells got him. And I was, we got over there, and it wasn't, they weren't firing in that area, so we spread out waiting for somebody to come or to take over, you know. We didn't know what to do. So I was laying there propped up against a deal, and I heard a shot real close to us and everything. I looked around, and I couldn't see anybody shooting, you know. And then I looked over about 20 or 30 yards. There's a piece of tin raised up, and a rifle come out, shot made another shot. So I told the guy over next to me, and he had a riot gun, we called them. It was a 12-gauge shotgun with just a few balls in a cartridge, you know. I said, "Come on, follow me." He said, "Where are we going?" I said, "We're going to go over and have some fun." So I said, "There's a sniper in this hole under this piece of tin. I'm going to raise that up, and you just shoot in there." And so I raised it up, and the Jap looked up there, and that guy cut loose with that shotgun about that far. What a mess that was. That guy had never seen action before that had a shotgun. He threw up. But that's the first real thing I did on Ewo.
A couple things that I wanted to just real quick ask about. One of them was you describe in the book how the ground was literally hot from like the lava, and it was uncomfortable to lie down on.
Oh, you couldn't lay on it. It scalded you. It's the steam heat coming from up through that volcanic ash. They keep talking about the sands of Iwo Jima. That wasn't sand. It was ash, volcanic ash, and it was like BB size deal, and it's not sand.
Yeah, and it was literally too hot to lay down on in a lot of places.
But it was too cold.
I was going to say, in the military we always get the worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
And it was too cold at night.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cold at night. You needed something over you. So we'd lay something on the deck, box or cardboard or extra blankets or something just to get off the and then you put a poncho over, and that would hold the heat to keep you warm, but it wouldn't scald you.
Yes. And then what about the razor grass? I've heard about that.
Let me tell you when I heard about it. We heard about the razor grass. MacArthur decided he wanted to use paratroopers in the jungles of New Guinea. And so they decided to send in a regiment. I forget how many were sent in. And they took pictures of where they wanted to land in the jungles, and they found this place, a grassed-in area, and no trees in that part there and so forth. Ideal place to land. So they jumped in there, and it was that razor grass, 12 feet high. And they had guys all cut up on it, running all the parachutes, and just that grass was terrible. And 2 of them were killed in the jump, and a couple of them landed in the jungle, and were hurt badly. And then they told us 2 guys were never heard of or seen again. Then they had to march out because they couldn't land a plane in the jungle to take them out, and it took them 6 weeks to get back to their base. And they had to be, fed along the way. They'd have to parachute stuff into them and so forth. So that's when the Marine Corps said, "Hey, we're not using the paratroopers in the jungle." So that's when they brought us back to the States and put us in there.
Now, how long was it after you guys landed that John Basilone was killed?
Well as I can remember, I guess it's the first day.
Yeah, that's
because I had to go back and get some TNT, and the guy was with me. He had to get some napalm. He was a flamethrower, and we saw this group of guys over there, and a guy giving the last rites to someone. What's going on here? And this guy said, Basilone was just killed. And it was a sad moment for me because he, like all the other Marines, he was a hero to us all, And that was bad. And then I heard that Hall had been killed, and I cried again. I cried unashamedly, because they meant a lot to me, And I just found out where Hall was buried. He evidently didn't have a family, a wife or anything like that. And I couldn't find out where he was, where he'd been buried or anything. And this girl that found this thing for me, her name was Liberty Phillips. And I'd been trying for 20 years to find this guy, and what happened to him and everything. And I told her my problem, and 3 days she had this magazine on the way. She found out through the computer, what it was all about, and I was amazed at that. And then she found out that Hall had been buried in, at first at Eagle, they got so many dead that the hospital ships couldn't take them and so forth, so they had to do something with the bodies, so they began to bury them there. And they stayed there temporarily for several years and brought him back to the States. And he was buried at, no one claimed his body. He was buried here in Hawaii at the Punch Bowl, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go over there someday to visit his grave because possibility, I found a second cousin to him. He works with the symphony orchestra in Cincinnati, and he never met Ralph, but he just heard his second cousin, and he didn't know anything about kin folks or anything to him.
As we progress through the battle here, you wrote about it obviously here in the book, and I think this description here is worth reading. So I'm going to go. You're out on patrol. You're trying to get back to friendly lines. Daylight's coming, and here we go. I brought up the rear when we took off in a low-moving dog trot because light's coming, so you're trying to make some movement here.
Yeah.
We had not gone far when, from within 5 yards of my 5 o'clock position, I heard the bolt action on a machine gun declaring the operator had braced it for firing. I'd heard this harbinger of death before. It stood as one of the hard lessons I'd learned in the jungles during the Solomon Islands campaigns. I recognized this telling sound of a Nambu, a Japanese light machine gun. This deadly weapon could spit out a clip of 20 cartridges in less than 2 heartbeats. Damn, I hated that nasty little 25 caliber weapon. At that first metallic sound, I shouted, "Hit the deck!" I landed on the ground at the same instant that a short burst of gunfire ripped through the air just inches above my head. I lay so flat on the deck that I could have crawled under a snake's belly. For Joe, the guy in front of me, luck had played out. He had taken one or more slugs in the back. The other man ran helter-skelter toward our lines. His headlong dash grabbed the attention of the Nambu, and it continued to spit short bursts at this hustling Marine. While this happened, the adrenaline and sense of reasoning within me worked in tandem, each feeding off each other. My situation was critical. I lay in the Jap's backyard, my position exposed with only my pistol to defend myself. I took a quick peek at the inner body 7 or 8 yards ahead of me. Seeing no movement, I reckoned Joe had bought the farm. He carried an M1 rifle. To survive this untenable fix, I needed that rifle and a position of concealment. I knew that the Nambu's clip held 20 cartridges, and the gunner fired in short bursts of 3 to 4 bullets. I figured he had only a burst or 2 left. He had 1. When the clip played out, it ejected. The sharp, tinny sound signaled me to move, and move I did. I came out of that prone position like a bolt of lightning. Man, in that span of 8 yards, I could have beaten Jesse Owens. My plan was simple. I'd race by, pick up on a dead run, and try and make it to the line of boulders about 20 yards beyond. Damn. On about the third step, I saw Joe move slightly. The plan had changed. I opted to take him instead. When I got there, I grabbed the back of his collar. Utter panic poured raw adrenaline into my engines. I could never have dragged him that far or fast otherwise. The rocks as a safe haven no longer stood as an option. We couldn't make it that far out. Out of gut-wrenching terror, I reacted on impulse, not rooted in thought or reasoning. With Joe now in tow, we moved into a slight depression in the volcanic ash. no more than a shallow dip. It had to do duty as shelter for the time being. What a poor place to defend, and it offered very little in way of protection, but nothing else showed any more promise. By instinct, I hit the deck. My timing proved perfect. The rattling peal of gunfire passed within inches of our heads. Well, I figured we were safe for the time being. Then problems began to escalate faster than I could resolve them. So this is a bad situation you're in right now. Man. And then you look down and you see there's a thermite grenade that he's got on his gear, that Joe has on his gear, and it looks like it's been shot or it's been hit with a glancing bullet, and it looks like that thing could go off at any time as well. Not only that, you got the Nambu being reloaded. So from there, I think you stick Joe with some morphine, and you kind of hold station. How long were you in that little depression in volcanic ash waiting?
Well, we estimated it was about 6.5 hours that we were in that little deflation in the volcanic ash. And it was kind of a slope and then a depression, and that the bullets would hit at that above us, That was as low as you could get, and we were safe at that as long as we stayed down.
And on top of all that, you start receiving friendly fire from mortars. Mortars start going off.
Oh, yeah, that was just normal, They were throwing a lot of mortar shells in there. And the ships were firing the heavy stuff, but not right in that area where we were.
Man.
And
what do you think, what prevented the Japanese from maneuvering on you? Were you just holding that position to the best of your ability, throwing grenades and whatnot?
Yeah, that's the only thing we could do. I couldn't move, so I just had to hope that they didn't come. And then when they gave out hope, well, I was prepared. I had the pistol. I was going to make sure that we wasn't taken prisoner, because at Villa La Vella, we were on a patrol, and a platoon of us, and we met some Japs, and one guy was hurt, and we didn't know he was hurt, and we fell back a little bit, and then we realized that this guy, his name was Joe something, I can't think of his last name now, and the Japs had captured him, and we dug in for the night, and they began to torture him, and he would, screaming and everything, and our officers said, "Don't move, we can't help him. They're just trying to get you in position. Don't move, and everything." We sit there and listen to him into the night. And in the morning, when it got light, we went in after him. And he was tied to the base of a tree with his penis cut off, and it was in his mouth. And they'd taken strips of skin and pulled it off that long. I just really tortured him, something terrible. And we found out that they were Royal Manchurian Marines. The Japanese in Manchuria had a colony up there, and they were bigger than the regular Japanese. They might have been Chinese, but they were big guys, and we got back at them. There were about 10 of them, I guess, in that group, and we finally caught up with them. But that poor guy suffered, and it was hard not to jump up and go, but that's what they wanted us to do, to come out of those holes. Because once we got in a foxhole at night, we were not supposed to move for any reason. If you had to use the toilet, well, you dug a hole in your hole. And those holes in the jungles, water would seep in them overnight, and you're constantly using your tin cup to take water out, throw it out. Fighting in the jungle was terrible. It was really terrible. The conditions were bad. The mosquitoes were bad. Just jungle fighting. I hated that. And you didn't get that at Iwo Jima, I don't remember seeing a mosquito or having a mosquito bite in at Iwo Jima.
And with that in your mind, there's no way that you were going to get captured. You were going to fight till you died.
I wasn't going to be captured. I was ready to take Joe out and myself, because I didn't want him to suffer like that either. And of course, I didn't tell him that I was going to shoot him, but I was ready to do it.
You spend the whole day there, and I'm going back to the book. As the long, lonely hours ticked away, thoughts ran the gauntlet of my mind. Early in the wait, I resolved to go down fighting. I considered surrender out of the question and never an option. I had heard and seen the results of the enemy's treatment of prisoners. No words can describe the pain and suffering the Japs laid on a person before permitting him to die. While the political correctness these days might frown on calling them Japs, I'll call them anything I please. My buddies and I have that right. We have earned it. Yes, when a showdown came, I intended to see that the enemy didn't take me or the Marine lying next to me alive. As my longest day neared the halfway point, through the din of battle, I heard my name called. Damn. The voice of Bull Fisher, my platoon sergeant, boomed over the other noise. He had brought in a combat patrol to find us. Now you kind of link up, and he's trying to figure out where the Nambu is located. We see you, now throw. I did, and the Nambu answered, giving away its position. The platoon laid down a withering barrage of small arms fire, putting the Nambu company out of business. Peter Adam got to me first, along with several other guys. He directed them to put Joe on the stretcher and sent them on their way. He said, let's get you out of here. I'll cover you. I got set to make a run for it, but as an afterthought, I told Pete that I wanted to pick up Joe's rifle. I took one last look at the shallow defilade in the sands of Iwo Jima. What a lifesaver. The dearest plot of ground that I ever occupied. Joe and I owed our lives to it. In a state of rage, Pete said, "We would have found you sooner, but Ski came back a blithering idiot. He refused to go back to show us the way to you guys. He reported you dead. Some of the guys wanted to shoot him. The bull sent him under guard to be taken off the island." And now I'm going to read an award citation. The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Silver Star Medal to Private First Class Theal F. Harvey, Jr., United States Marine Corps, for services set forth in this following citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity while serving with Company C, 1st Battalion, 26 Marines, 5th Marine Division, in action against enemy Japanese forces on Iwo Jima Volcano Islands, 20 February 1945. When his three-man patrol, which was sent out to establish contact with the adjoining company, was ambushed by heavy fire from an enemy machine gun and one of the men was seriously wounded, Private First Class Harvey dragged the fallen Marine under heavy fire to the shelter of a nearby hole. Remaining with the wounded man while his companion went for aid, he held off the hostile forces with his rifle and hand grenades until the arrival of the rescue party. Then, exposing himself to enemy fire and directing accurate heavy fire on the Japanese position, he successfully covered the evacuation of the casualty. By his initiative, courage, and unselfish devotion to duty, he undoubtedly saved the life of his comrade and upheld the highest traditions of United States naval service. For the President, John Sullivan, Secretary of the Navy. Don't really know what to say after reading that, sir.
Oh, well, that was a long day for me, but I didn't think I needed a reward. I was just doing what the Marines are taught to do, you know, and I was surprised when they pinned a medal on me.
You know, you talked a little bit earlier about what it was like at night, and I thought this was a really good section of the book. Here's the way we handled the nights on the front line. Once darkness set in, everyone went to his foxhole. Orders said no one left the hole for any reason. As I pointed out, we ceded the night to the enemy. From caves and tunnels within our lines and units, these adversaries infiltrated our positions. They sought to come into our holes and kill with knives, bayonets, or guns. Some simply moved in close enough to toss in a hand grenade if they found the occupants on the alert for them. So we declared open season on anyone moving around above ground. To combat this type of warfare, each foxhole comprised more or less a mini fortress within itself. The man on watch with weapon ready sat near the top of the hole so he had a panoramic view of his surroundings. This proved vital as the deadly nocturnal infiltrators came in from all directions. While on watch, you had to stay mentally alert, clear-headed, and responsive to any movement near your position. A moving shadow in the night presented a target to challenge with gunfire. I had the first 2-hour watch. When tired, sleepy, hungry, scared, lonesome, and homesick, a 2-hour watch seems like an eternity. The constant booming of incoming and outgoing cannon blast filled the night air. Intermingled with the ear-splitting blasts came the prevailing rattle of machine gun and rifle fire. Interwoven with the blare and the clamor of these machines of war, you heard desperate human utterances filled with all the emotions that life allows. When your watch ends, the night calls on you to sleep. Sheer, debilitating exhaustion will put you to sleep, usually a restless, troubled slumber. I'm going to continue on. In the deep of the night, after my second round of sentinel duty, a staccato of pistol fire at point-blank range startled me awake. I leaped to my feet at full alert. I could see Massia crouched up beyond the dividing ridge. In a hoarse whisper, I asked, "What's up?" He answered, "We have a visitor." "Did you get him?" "I don't think so." "Where?" "On your side." Then I heard it. The dreaded sound of metal striking the wooden stock of a rifle. A Japanese grenade activates by whacking its firing pin against a solid object. This whack ignites a fuse that burns for 7 seconds before detonation. Beyond the rim of my hole, hidden in the darkness, an enemy soldier had the drop on me. I had no options or defense for the inevitable. Then I saw it coming in a looping arc toward me, a harbinger of death. The burning fuse gave off a radiant, sparkling light like a kid's sparkler on the 4th of July. I had to get it out of the hole before it exploded. With a sense of urgency enhanced by stark terror, I cupped both hands together. I caught it in mid-air and shoveled it over the rim of the hole out of harm's way. Sadly, the rapidly burning fuse did not give me time to scoop the missile back in the direction from whence it came. Massia had my pistol, else I could have scrambled to the top of the hole and possibly got some shots off at the adversary, but I could only crouch and wait. The interval didn't last long, as out of the darkness came a notifying sound telling us they had armed another grenade and sent it on its way. However, this grenadier showed some smarts. He held the grenade for about 2 seconds before tossing it. This delay gave me only 5 seconds to do my thing. Out of anxiety, I reacted too quickly and bobbled it. As I hit the deck, I kicked it, at the same time throwing up my arms instinctively to protect my chest and head. The kick and the explosion occurred simultaneously. My feet and legs took most of the shrapnel, and volcanic ash hatched by the blast. I fell to my butt to a sitting position on the slanting side of the hole. I felt very little pain in my lower limbs, but my head throbbed with the mother of all headaches. I had a deafening ringing in my ears, accompanied by excruciating pain. I couldn't feel or move my legs. I sat there stunned, deaf, and trying to recollect my notions. Another grenade landed within inches beside me. Without thought or reason, I hoisted my hips to come down on the glittering missile. This witless act placed the right cheek of my buttocks on the device. My weight pushed the grenade into the loose volcanic ash, which absorbed a great deal of the energy generated by the blast. Now this one really laid some hurt on me. I knew that I had to get some help quick-like, or I might never leave that pit alive. Help, I realized, sat about 25 yards away. I couldn't stand or even feel my legs, so walking or even crawling exceeded my options. Dragging myself with my elbows and hands appeared my only option. Getting to the top and out of the hole took just about all my strength. Kind of like swimming upstream in the waters of a river at flood stage. At the top of the hole, I lost it. I either fainted or, out of futility, acceded to death. I know not which. Lying there in that state of oblivion, an ethereal entity began to take form in my mind's vision. Out of this ghostly apparition, I came face to face with the voice of my mother. She commanded, "Sonny, you wake up and get to those who can help you. Don't you dare give up. We all love you and you need to return to us." And then my former football coach, Joe Coleman, appeared. And he said, "Harvey, you sorry little shit, get off your dead ass and move out. There's hell to pay, and you got to pay it. I ain't a having none of your quitting. Now hustle, else I'm kicking your skinny butt." When the old coach spoke, it came out as demanding commands. You listened and you reacted. You know, I reached deep inside myself and find the strength and power to drag my failing body the last few yards to help and safety. Thanks, Coach Joe. At the brink of the hole, I came to a halt to alert those inside of my presence. Before exposing myself to possible friendly fire, I called out, "Sam, this is Harvey and I'm hurt bad. I'm coming in. Now don't shoot." So, 3 grenades thrown at you in your hole.
Fear saved me.
You were able to throw the first one back.
Well, I just kind of shoveled it back. I didn't actually catch it. I just shoveled it out. It just struck my hand. I got it out of the hole completely, but not where I should have. I wanted it to go back toward the guy that had thrown it, but that didn't happen.
And then the second one, you bobble it a little bit, lands at your feet.
Yes, it landed at my feet. I kicked it, and it kicked back. Took me out of the game.
How many days? This was 6 or 7 days into the battle that this happened?
The 9th night.
Okay.
That was the same night that my buddy Lee Darch was wounded and so forth.
And you were going to tell that story about how he got wounded.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's in the book. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You want to tell us how he explained that situation to you?
Yeah, I'll tell you. He was a good Marine. I mean, when the chips were down, he played the game. He was put out front. He was a scout sniper. That was his designation. And he had in the hole with him a young guy that had never been in action before, Danny Cruel. And Danny was a BAR man. BAR, that's a Browning automatic rifle. So they're in the hole. Carver's in his poncho getting a rest, and Danny was supposed to be on watch. Well, Carver was sound asleep, and he was wakened by a kind of a gasp cry out, and he rose the poncho edge real slow like, looked, and he saw that a Jap had straddled Danny Cruel and had cut his throat. Well, Carver had his K-bar knife right there beside him, stuck in the thing, so he took the knife and was able to get the Jap in the back and took him out of the picture. But there were two other Japs in the hole, and they didn't know that Carver was under that poncho, and he didn't know that there was in the so he got to his knees, turned, and those Japs began to bayonet him. So they got him in the chest, got one lung, they got him in the chest 3 times, and he had his arms up to protect himself. And one Jap stuck his bayonet through his forearm here, came out here, went through the muscle here, out here. And the other Japs put the same hurt on his left side. So here he is, flexing his muscle. They can't drag their bayonets out because when he flexed the muscle, it tied them up. And so he's struggling there. Well, a guy back up on the side of the hill figured, he saw this action, figured that Carver and Danny Cruel had it. So he throws a hand grenade down there. And it didn't go in the hole, but it must have done some damage to the guys at the bayonet, Japanese, Well, the Japanese were scared off, so they left, scrambled out of the hole, and Carver was able to get his arms divorced from the bayonets, and he took Danny Cruel's BAR and shot those 2 Japs as he ran down the hill. And he was awarded the Silver Star for that. He deserved it. Well, as I told you before, Carver loved his beer. And when he hit the island, he had 14 cans of beer. Well, on that ninth night left, on the 9th night, when both of us were hurt, he had only 8 cans of beer left. Well, they finally get to Carver and get him on a stretcher, and they're carrying him back. Now, this is in the dark of the night. And they get him on the stretchers, and they take him to the rear for help and everything. And he's having trouble because blood is forming in his mouth, his nose, and so forth. But he's able to tell the guys right there, I forget the sergeant that was carrying him right there. But he said, when you guys get back, there's beer in my backpack. Plop, they drop him. They run back there, got the beer, and drank it while they're still in the hole. Come back, they can't find Darch. It's dark, and he's calling out to them, and he can't be heard because he had so much blood in his mouth and everything.
Yeah, man.
So he laid there until dawn, until it got light enough to find him. Well, he loves to tell this story when he gets around a bunch of guys at the USO and at the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And I'll take him over those from the hospital. I'll take him over, and he tells that story. He said, this is my buddy. He nearly got me killed. Then I tell the true story, He nearly got himself killed. And he was a character, and I loved that guy. he was really a guy.
And I guess the lesson to be learned there is Marines love their beer.
Oh, yeah. They love their beer.
Now, you get, and you already seen the flag been raised?
Well, I think that was raised about the third day there, I guess. Well, somewhere like that. But I was on the far side of the island on the other beach. I think I alluded to that earlier tonight. Well, anyway, let's see, that's how that was happening. Oh, I was working, there was a big cliff there, and there was a pillbox on the side of that other beach. You know, we rented that other beach over there. Well, there's a pillbox there, and it was, they had Nambu, I guess, was firing at those ships that were sitting out there, those small boats and everything. Well, we're sitting up there, and this pillbox is on the side of this sloping hill down to the beach, you know. And so they loaded me on a rope to put a shape charge on the top of that pillbox, you know. It was concrete. So they lowered me down there, and I put a shape charge on that, and that didn't phase that stuff. So they pulled me back up, and then a guy was with us radioed that that little ship out there, let's see, is a landing craft empty, LCI, and they had a twin barrel 40 millimeter deal up there, and they began to firing right there, and they just pumping things. They were bringing these clips with 4 of those shells on it, putting them up there, and this guy would fire, and then another guy would pull him off there, and they'd get there, and they was laughing and whooping it up, and they finally just drilled a hole in that thing. That pillbox just exploded. We was up there cheering, they were cheering on the thing, and later on that day, we come up to a cliff there, a hill thing, and there was a big door over a cave on the side of that cliff, and it was heavy with wood and metal and so forth. So I was going to use TNT to blast it in. So I put the TNT, put the whole pack on a pole, and I was carrying it, and I was going to come up the side there, and the guys were protecting me, you know, around any Japs that came out to meet me or anything. So I'm slipping up there, and I have my pistol that my mom had sent me. I had that in my right hand, and I had this charge of TNT on a pole, and I was slipping up on that thing from the side, and I was going to put that down there and put a sharp fuse on it and let it blow it out. Well, as I was walking up there, a Jap come running from around a rock right there, and he had a bandit and come charging at him, and I took a pistol and shot him about 3 times in the belly. And that's the only time I had ever knew that I'd killed. That was my kill right there. Nobody fired. Because other times, when we'd see a job, there may be 4 or 5 of us firing at the same time, you know, so you couldn't claim. But that was my kill. They all cheered me back over here. And so I set off that TNT, and it didn't phase that door at all. And so as I was coming back, and we were looking at that guy's rifle, and he was out of bullets, the one that I'd shot, you know. And so about that time, heard a cheer. Man, it cheered just like somebody had made a touchdown, you know. And I stepped back, look up there, and there that flag had just been raised. And I was about 50 yards, I guess, from the base of that volcano, that Suribachi. And I thought, man, the war is over right there. We've won right there. But it went on for another 30 days, you know. But Ira Hayes was one of the guys that lifted that thing, and I knew him. And, of course, at one time I thought I was the only guy on the island that didn't help raise that flag, because everybody was saying I was one of those guys that raised the flag.
And that was one of the last things you saw before you got evacuated out. I know you talk about in the book you had them turn your stretcher so you could see the flag before you left.
Yeah,
before you were medically evacuated.
Yeah. Well, I was hurt. Lead Arch and I were both hurt the same night, the ninth night there. But there was some discussion about we were hurt the third night or something. Was it the third night?
That's just poor reporting.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he was hurt the same night I was, and I was taken out to put on. Well, I wound up in a long ditch that they just used a bulldozer and right there in the volcanic ash just dug a hole there, and it was about 100 yards long, and it was just lined with guys on stretcher, and the guys was working on them. And I woke up, and I'd been doped up, you know, and I woke up and I knew somebody was working over me, and they got to my boots, and I wanted my boots. I was proud of those boots, my paratrooper boots, you know. And he said, "Oh, one of them's no good." And I said, "I want to make them be fixed." And I was nearly in tears, you know, because I was hurt, and I was under the influence of morphine and stuff like that. So I said, I want my boots. And so he took them off, and I was laying on my stomach, and I hugged those boots right here, pulled them up to me, because I wasn't going to lose my boots. I was so proud of them. And then I went out, and then the next thing I know, I'm being put on a board. I was in a below an LST, and they were going to take me off that board with 4 other guys with a platform on cables. They were going to pull it. They started pulling up, and one of those stretchers fell off. It was metal formed and chicken wire on the bottom of it because it was a metal stretcher, and that went to the thing. And there was about 12 sailors on the Higgins boat and on the LST. Man, they dove in there trying to get to that guy, but he just went down so fast, and just wasn't able to save him. And so they pulled me around to the front, or the rest of us around there was about 4 or 5 of us still on there. So they pulled us around, and they opened those doors on the LST and let the ramp down, and that boat just went up. That Higgins boat just went up there, and they took us up on the top deck, pulled alongside the USS Ozark. Now, that's a mountain, so the supply ships and troop transports were named after mountains. So the USS Ozark, that's where I was taken up there, and I was on the deck. It was raining, and a doctor was going through and picking them out. And they got to me and he said, take this guy in first, take him right on in. And I said, I wanted to see the flag. He said, well, he's up front right there. And just like a miracle, that ship slid around on anchor because the seas was really rough that day, and it was raining and everything. But all of a sudden there was shafts of light coming through the clouds, and you could see that flag up there right there, and I cried. And then they took me down there, and I still had my boots. And the Dr. Anderson, he said, take him on in there right quick right there. And so we went in there, and they put me up on a table. I still had my boots, and Corpsman tried to take my boots, and I wouldn't give him, no, you don't take my boots. Don't take my boots. And Dr. Anderson said, let him keep his boots. Well, the next thing I know, I'm in a room about this big, and it's in the room where the ship's crew lived. That's where they had their bunks in there. So I'm on a bunk that's about 4 or 5 feet high here, and then another bunk below. But up there above, I could reach, there was pipes going through there, through the bulkhead up here. So I reach up there. Now I'm under the influence of something that should never have been given to me. It wound up that I was allergic to it. So I know what I'm doing, but I can't keep from doing it. So I grabbed that pipe and pulled myself off the bunk, and I was going hand over hand to my boots. I was going for my boots. I was desperate, I was crying out. I was calling for my boots and everything. I looked back on it, I thought I was crazy. I should have been crazy or something. Well, anyway, I get to a door, and above that door, the pipes went through the bulkhead up there. And so I reached up and then I was going to the other room, and I lost it. I fell on the deck. And I don't know what happened, but I was on the deck. But I wound up in a big room. There's a big area on this ship. It was lit up, and there was all kinds of cots all around here, and the guys laying on it and everything. Well, I wake up, and I'm thirsty. I've got to do a bowel movement, and I was real miserable. So I hollered real loud, Corpsman. There was no Corpsman, and I didn't have any needles in me, feeding me, all that stuff. And so I hollered, and all these guys, they had head wounds and bandages on their head, and they all hollered and everything, and I God, what's going on? So I lay there, and there's a guy next to me, and of course his head is here, my head is over here, and I could see he was looking up at the ceiling. I said, hey, mate, where are the Corpsmans here? And he didn't answer me. And I got real mad about him. I said, well, let me know what's going on here. So I hollered real loud again. And all these guys began to holler and scream and everything, and I was shaking my head, mad and everything, hungry and just miserable. And so I gave up, and I laid there for a while. Well, I heard a door open. I looked up. It over here is about 30 yards, I guess, from me. In this big room, well, there was a truck or something over there parked, and they used those to haul tanks and trucks and things, those ships right there. But this room was well lit, and all these guys was just laying on cots, Well, I heard this door slam, and I look up, and it's Dr. Anderson, the guy that operated on me. So I holler real loud, Dr. Anderson. And all these guys began to holler and scream at me and everything. And he walked on down there, and he just kind of shook his head and kept walking, you know. And then, man, I knew I was in trouble. I needed help, you know. I said, I'm going to watch that door. If he comes through again, he went out the other door on the left side. So I waited, and sure enough, about 30 minutes or something like that, I don't know, I heard this door open, and here Dr. Anderson comes in. So I'm smart. I'm not going to holler and let these other guys fade me out. So I began waving. He was walking, kept walking right there. Then I said, and I had to holler. So I hollered again, Dr. Anderson. And all these guys began to holler. And then he stopped and kind of shook his head, and I was waving at this time. And so he comes over there. He said, well, Harvey, what are you doing down here? I said, I don't know. He said, I've been looking 2 days for you. And I just presumed you'd been buried at sea. And he said, you don't know how you got down here? And I said, no, I don't know how I got down here. So he said, I'll go get help. Now don't go anywhere. And I said, I'm not going. I'm going to wait for you. While I was waiting for him, there was a group of about 12 guys came in. And I could tell they were doctors and corpsmen and everything. And they started over here, and they'd come to a thing. There'd be 2 guys that put they had stethoscopes on. They'd put on these guys that were laying there. And sometimes they'd just shake their head, and those corpsmen would take him off and put him on a stretcher and take him away. And they was working along there, and God was hoping that Dr. Anderson would get back. And these guys would come to one guy right there, and then they'd shake him off and leave him there and go on around. So Dr. Anderson came back down there while these guys were going. I said, Doctor, what are these guys doing? They're taking some of these guys out. He said, Harvey, these guys, there's nothing we can do to help them. They have head injuries, brain injuries, and they're brain dead right now. He said, there's no hope for them. We can't do anything for them. So we're burying most of them at sea. And I said, what was I doing down here? And he said, I don't know how in the world they got you down here. Then I told him that what I'd done, you know, and they didn't know what to do with me, so they just put me down there with those guys. And so he said, you wait here. And I said, I'll wait here. So he went up and came back with 4 corpsmen with him, and they put me on a stretcher and took me over to the door. And that doctor, he got down dropped down on one knee, and these guys were working together. I said, Doctor, you can't help these guys in here? He said, no, we can't help them. There's nothing we can do. They're in God's hands. And I said, well, I guess I was in God's hand too for a while. He said, yeah, I guess so. So said, we're going to pull into Guam, and we would be taking you off. You'll be taken back to Hawaii and so forth. And so sure enough, in about an hour, they took me off the ship, and Dr. Anderson came down, and I thanked him, and I guess he saved my life. And then they took me to Aida Heights at Pearl Harbor, and that's where I was. I was in a full body cast up to here, all the way down. They had split. Each leg had a cast over it too, all in one piece. And they put me in the room with this guy here.
Now, before we talk about that, I know you brought a photograph today, a big photograph of, very kind of typical picture that you see of a bunch of military guys. This is a picture of Marines, clearly. And this picture right here is a picture of
the 1st Battalion, C Company, 26th Marines, 5th Division.
And in this photograph, this is your company that you went into Iwo Jima. How many people are in this picture?
243. At the end of the battle, after 36 days, I think 14 of these guys walked off the island. The rest of them were wounded and carried off or died. A lot of them were buried at sea because they had 6 hospital ships, and they filled up real fast, and they had to go to Guam and Saipan to be taken off, flown back to Hawaii.
243 started and 14 walked off the island.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And I've had this picture for years, and one of them hanging in, used to hang over my bed, and every night I would look at these guys, And then I moved into my living room right there, and I could watch it. I looked at it every day because I don't want to forget these guys. I don't want to forget them. And I can remember their faces, but it's hard for me to still put names to a lot of them. I like Darch, I remember him. And Peter, I remember him. My officers, I remember him. And just 14 guys walked off that island. And war is really costly in lives and everything. And I'm not going to ever forget these guys.
We won't either, sir.
Yeah.
When you're in Guam now, you're basically in a medical ward, right?
Yeah. Aida Heights was the name of the hospital there. It overlooks Pearl Harbor. It was built there after the war started, And so I'm in this...
and you get reunited with Cobber at this point, right?
Yeah.
You guys couldn't get away from each other.
Let me digress here. I was put into a room in that hospital, Aida Heights in Hawaii. I was put in this room with another bed and a guy in that bed. And he had a head bandage over him right there. And I was laying next to him, and I couldn't see him, and he wouldn't talk to me and everything, so I didn't say anything to him and everything. And the nurse would come in there, and they'd take him off and bring him back after a while, and he never talked, and I never say anything. I gave up trying to talk to him and so forth. Well, I'm laying there feeling sorry for myself, and I hear somebody, "Fred Harvey, are you in this war?" Just loud, And I recognize Carver's voice. He has a voice that would carry you for a mile and everything. So I'm raised up. I'm in this room. It's about this big here, I'm in the bed here, and this other guy's in the bed over here. And I raised up enough, and I could see Carver down there, and he's kept hollering, "Fred Harvey." This little nurse ran down there and got in his face, and he said, "You just keep your mouth shut." I mean, she really read him off, Well, I'm looking for my buddy. She said, "He's in this ward, but he's in a room on the end down here." And so she led him down there. And he came in there, and there was Cobber, man. I was glad. Now he's bandaged up like this, his arms and everything, that had taken those bayonets. And he was pushing Bill Cross, who's in a wheelchair with one of his legs missing. And Carver was pushing him like this, and Bill was sitting there directing him and everything. So Carver was standing in the door, and he said, "What are Harvey and this guy standing here in this little room by themselves?" They said, "Well, because of their injuries, and everything. Why aren't you out here with the other Marines?" Well, she went over and closed the door, but she didn't close it all. I could hear them talk right there. She said, "Well, your buddy over here, we don't know what to do with him. He's got injuries, and his legs are blood clotted and so forth. So we don't know what to do for him. And this guy over here, he's lost his face. He can't communicate, and he wants to die." And so, God, I kind of scared me, and everything. So Carver said, "Put him out here with the other Marines right there." And so we went up there, and the nurses' area right here is about halfway down the hall. That ward must have been 70 yards long anyway, and beds are on each side. And the nurses' bed is right here in the middle. Well, they put me over here and put this guy over here on the right side. And Carver said, "Well, take those bandages off of his face." And the nurse said, "Well, he doesn't want them taken off." They said, "Take them off right there. People are going to have to see him. He's going to have to learn to live with it." And so, well, I'd seen it when they doctored him, and when I looked over there, and they took it. This was all gone. You could see the back of his neck back there, his backbone and everything. Only thing on his face was his eyes, and he had his ears. And no way they could feed him, There's no way he could eat anything. And they just fed him like they were feeding me too, just intravenously right there. And they put him over there, and that guy, Carver would talk to him, and said, "Take those bandages off. You're going to have to live with that right there. So you're with Marines, and we all understand and love you and everything." And so he took off the bandages and left them off, and lay there, and all these Marines would come by and glance at him and then pat him, and so forth. And he spirits rose, and of course you couldn't tell us that, but you could tell by his actions and everything. So Carver, this is a plastic surgery ward that we're on, and the guy that headed up was named, I can't think of his name right now, but he was an All-American football player in Wisconsin. And he's a big, massive guy with big hands and broad shoulders. Here he was doing delicate operations on guys, plastic surgery. And so they didn't know what they could do with me because of blood clots. They couldn't start operating on me because both my legs had blood clots all up into my stomach and so forth. But Carver told me later that that nurse had told him that there was no way that I'd live through it. And I'd been in there about a week, and Carver talked to this doctor. What was his name? He was an All-American football player. Well, anyway, he said, how are you going to fix it? He said, well, we're just going to have to build him a new face. but we can't start on him until he gets strong enough to take it, and so forth. And so Carver said, well, do you have something that she said, yeah, we got a little booklet over here that has 6 facial features on it. Carver said, let me see it. So he looked at 6 pages with 6 facial features on it. So Carver gave it to Harold here, and he took him to each bed and had a note on there written, pick out the best looking face in this booklet. So they all voted on which face he wanted, And this guy, he was, of course, he was happy to be out with the other guys and everything, and he would stay in a wheelchair a lot and go from place to place. Guys would come over and talk to him, and if he had anything to say, he'd write it out and so forth. And then they started operating on him, and they didn't know what to do with me. I'm still laying there in my cast. And then one day the little nurse came up. She's from Austin, Texas, and I can't recall her name right now. But she was 65 years old at that time, and they were trying to discharge her, and she wouldn't let them discharge her. She said, I'm going to stay in here until this war is completely over. And she did. Well, she came out and told me, we think we might have found a way to help you. And she told me, said, there's a guy had a item in the New England Medical Journal or something like that. And he was in New Orleans, and his name was Faust. And I remember the word Faust because there's an opera written about Dr. Faust, So I've remembered that name all along. And so she told the commander of that hospital, that she wanted that guy to come over and look at me. So they put him on, got a plane, flew him over there, and they looked at me and said, well, we can't do anything until we operate on him. And he said, I have a way, I think I might be able to help you. Well, they came in there and they took a machine, a vibrator or something, and cut the top of that cast off of me and set it to the side, and then they put me on a table on my stomach, and Dr. Faust put 6 needles along my spine. And you know what a football or basketball needle looks like? Mm-hmm. Needle about that long and a little head on it, to screw into a pump. Well, anyway, that's the way those things looked, There's needles built like that. They weren't the real thing, but that's what they looked. Well, they stuck those along my spine, and then they put some kind of fluid in there, and I thought they'd put gasoline on me and set me afire. God, it burned. I thought I was on fire. Hey, I thought they was trying to kill me, really. And they said, no, that's just a symptom. They're not burning up and everything. And so they gave me about 6 of those treatments, and my legs began to clear up, dissolved in the blood clots. And then the doctor started operating on me, plastic surgery, and they took skin off my legs and put it on my butt and everything, and then they took a picture of me, and it looked like my legs and my buttocks had been worked over by a guy that made tattoos on guys. looked like a doctor had, a tattoo artist had fouled up, and this thing. My whole backside was just black, and it was that volcanic ash in there. And so they got me up, got me fixed. My legs began to thaw out, the thing. And it was going to take me. They came in and asked me where I wanted to be taken to the hospital, and the closest one to my hometown was Corpus Christi, and that was nearly 900 miles. And so this doctor said, "Hey, Harvey, how about coming to New Orleans? We have a hospital there, naval hospital there, and I can look after you more." And I said, "Well, that's great." So I was in the hospital, sent down there, and Carver had been sent before he had left and gone to the East Coast. And so they put me on a plane and flew me to California. Well, that plane was a Constellation, and that's what it was used for, was a hospital thing. And we got nearly halfway home, and that plane developed problems. And so here I am with a bunch of other guys that were walking. I was the only one that was on a stretcher. And so the nurse came in there and put things around me and gave instructions to all these other guys what to play, because they was expecting that plane to go down. And so they decided that it wasn't to the point of no return, so they turned around, took us back to Honolulu. And all these hula girls met us on there, thought we were coming in for a vacation. And they put on a show for us. And then they fixed the plane and finally got me over to, what's that town across the bay? They have a football team there, San Francisco. What is the name of that?
Alameda?
Alameda, yeah. And that's where they landed me right there. And they put me out on the tarmac, and I had my hands over my eyes like that. The sun was shining in right there. And somebody kicked me. Said, "You little bastard, where in the hell have you been?" I look up at this copper. Well, he had been taken to another hospital further down the coast, about 20, 30 miles from there. And he had been hitchhiking for the last 3 weeks, hitchhiking over every day to meeting these planes that were bringing guys in. He finally found me. And so they took me over there, and I can bring up the name of that hospital he was in. Well, I can't. It's not important. So that doctor wanted me to be brought back to New Orleans. Well, Carver was still there in California when I left. Well, I was down there, and I got in pretty good shape. I could walk around with a cane and crutches at time, and I heard that there was a farm outside over across the river in Algiers, Louisiana, and the Navy had an ammunition dump over there on the river, across the river. And they let Marines go over there and rehab get better, and they'd take care of things on the farm. And so I heard about it, and I begged them to let me go over there. So they let me go over there, and with a stipulation that I would take care of chickens because I couldn't take care of anything else. And so here I went over there, and I was taking care of chickens. And they had these white leghorn chickens and great facilities for them to live on. They never got on the ground. They was on wire, chicken wire, and they had oats or something, or planted seeds thrown in there, and these chickens would walk around and eat that green as it come up high enough. Well, I would gather up the eggs and take them in and doing that, you know. Well, the guy that was taking care of that got real mad because that was a cushy job, but it was the only job I could do, you know. And so I was taking care of the chickens, you know, and feeling sorry for myself and everything. Well, I had a bucket full of eggs, and I'd take them over there and then take them up the naval base eating place, you know, and they took care of all their eggs and so forth. Well, anyway, I was out there and had a bunch of that, and I had walking on using a cane, and I heard the horns sounding right there, and guys screaming, and I look up, and it was Lee Darch. He's sitting up on the cab of the truck, and they were hauling slop from the cafeteria, you know, and it was Carver. He had found me. And then he told this story. Well, he was shipped to an area up on the East Coast. Do you remember what that place was?
I don't.
Well, anyway, he was taken up there, and he was discharged, so he tried to buy a motorcycle, and he called my mother and found out where I was stationed. And he said, "Don't tell Harvey where I'm at," and everything. And so he couldn't buy a motorcycle. He didn't have enough money, so he hitchhiked down there. So he hitchhiked down there, and it took him 3 days to get down there. And he got his uniform was soiled, you know, and he'd been in it for about 6 days. And so, and he's one of these guys that, man, it had to be dressed completely. Well, in that picture, we tell him that he was the only Marine that ever invaded with pressed dungarees and all that.
Yeah, a picture in the book where it shows him
Yeah.
from behind. You can see the beer in his gas mask thing, and you can also see that his uniform is pressed and starched.
Oh, yeah. And they had his initials,
Yeah.
I mean, his name stenciled on his spade, you know,
Yeah.
and trenching tool. Well, it took him 6 days to, 6 trips or rides to get down there, and that was about 3 or 4 days it took him to get from the East Coast down to New Orleans. Well, he gets to New Orleans, and he don't know where I'm at. He just knew I was on a naval base down there. So he has no idea what to do and everything. So he goes to a tailor shop, cleaning place, you know, and that guy cleaned his uniform, you know, and pressed it and everything for him because he needed to look good all the time. So he was walking around having no idea what to do. So he saw a Red Cross car parked in front of a building right there, and it was a Red Cross office right there. So he walked over and looked, and there's a little lady sitting at the desk. So he has his discharge papers and everything in there, and he left his sea bag outside. So he walked in there. He looked around, you know, like he was being followed. Got up close to this lady and said, "I've got to find a man. Now I'm on a special mission, and I've got to find him. You know, it's a real critical thing." She said, "I'll help you." She got fired up, and she found out that I was over there at Aida Heights at that naval ammunition base over there. And so she said, "I'll take you over there." So she closes up her office, and Carver's holding his discharge papers on there and looking around, you know, gets his sea bag, put it on there, and she goes down through town, you know, and running stoplights because she was in that thing that had big red crosses on it, you know. And she gets him down there to the a ferry boat. That's where they had a bridge built across there. So, and she had called over at the base, and they had a van over there to meet him, you know, and everything. And so he pulls the car up there, and that ferry boat was waiting on him. And so Carver got out, and he hugged that lady, and she had tears in her eyes.
She did her part for the country.
Oh,
the top
yeah.
secret mission.
Yeah. So he gets over there, and this guy in this thing, deal, he looks around, and he thought should be an admiral or something, you know, and he's the PFC. And so his car had a siren on it, so he turned on his siren to run him down to the town, the little town across there, and got him to the base, and that guy was going to take him to the headquarters office. He said, "Oh no, I can't stop there. I've got to go." So, and he said, "I'll get down there some way." So he's standing there, and you see this truck coming around the corner, and it just coming out, and it had 2 barrels of slop from the mess hall on it, and they tell him, said, "Hang on there," and he said, "I'm not getting up there. There's a million flies around it and everything." And so there's 2 guys in the truck, so they put him. They take his sea bag and put it up there between them, and then he gets up on the hood and sits on the cab right there. And when they get close to that farm where I was, they begin to honk their horn and holler, Carver stomping the hood of that truck, hollering my name and everything. And I was so happy to see him, I cried. he came up there, and I was really glad to see him, you know. It's just like losing your best friend, you know, and finding him in the end. And so here I am, and I take him over there to the sergeants who's in charge of us on that farm. That owner of that farm, when the war started, donated his farm lands to be used to build ammunition dumps, you know, where they dump or mounds where they dig in the ground and had that thing. There's about 50 of those mounds along there. And so this sergeant, God, I can't think of his name, is in charge of the farm, you know, because that guy wanted his farm back just like it was after the war was over. And they had to take care of the horses on there and the pigs and, well, the hogs, and take care of the house and everything. Well, they was using the house, and there were 6 other Marines in there beside this sergeant that was in charge of them. So when Carver I took him over there to the sergeant. The sergeant was working on a wheel on a tractor, and I said, "Hey, Sarge, this is Lee Darch. He's my buddy, and he just got into town. Can he stay here?" And he said, "Yeah, he can stay here." So he took us in to his desk right there, and he gives him a card, you know, that gets him in and out of there of a guy that had already left. So here Carver's got another name, and he's on base without, not even in the Marine Corps anymore. And so he was going to help me with the chickens. And so we take over the chickens, and this guy, big old red-headed guy, he was the guy that had the chicken job, which is the best job on the farm. He had to give it up, and he was mad at me. He wouldn't even speak to me. So here Carver was, and on base with with a card, to let him get in and off on the base. And he was just another Marine. He just didn't draw any pay, And so we stayed down there for quite a while. And we decided that the chickens, some of those chickens weren't doing their job, and Cobber said, we need to cull out the non-layers. So he called a veterinarian and asked him how you decided which one was layered. He said, well, put 2 fingers at this point and everything. We got the wrong information, and we took it wrong. And we killed a bunch of those layers, and it cut the production of eggs out. We got in trouble. They brought me in because Cobber couldn't go before the man, and they were going to send me back to the hospital, and really mad. And this sergeant was out there. He said, well, let them stay, and I'll put them on the hogs. And so they put us on the hogs. That's the worst job on the deal. So,
and how long were you down there at the hospital in total, or at the farm in total?
Probably 3 months.
And then that was the end of your career. You got discharged at the end of that.
Yeah, from the hospital. Yeah, I was discharged from the hospital, and so I was free to go. Why don't you read that out loud, because that introduces Cobber and what we meant to each other. Yeah,
it's a picture of you two, and I guess this is the day you were discharged.
Yeah, they took us out. This lieutenant and this sergeant drove us out to the edge of town, and I drank a Coca-Cola, and Cobber had a beer, and both these guys saluted us, and that sergeant had been in charge. He was in there in tears. He had to see us go. And so
it says, our faces are bathed in sadness. We had just been medically discharged from the Marine Corps. The Corps, which had been our home, was now just a memory. We loved the Marines and thought we'd always serve the flag. But circumstances intervened and left us homeless. We now faced an uncertain future. However, it didn't mark the end of the friendship that had been forged and nurtured by war. Like brothers, we have remained close ever since.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, there's great detail in the book that you've got to tell even more stories, and it's great to hear those. And I definitely, anybody should get this book, and it's available right now. And I gotta say, there's 2 versions of the book, and the version that you want to order, we'll have it on our website so that people will get the right one. It's called Hell Yes, I'd Do It Again by T. Fred Harvey, and it's got a blue cover. And the other version of it has a similar title. Just get this one that's in blue. What made you decide to write the book?
Well, people wanted to hear the story right there, and I'd taken a lot of notes, and so I decided to write a book. But it's kind of hard for me because I quit high school because I couldn't pass English.
Well, you did a great job because the book, and reading the book, it's a great read. And then you spent once you retired, you said you coached football for 45 years and worked with kids, and you still were telling me you still work out every day.
Yeah.
You still get after it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I have weights in my apartment, and I work on the weights, and I have one of those running machines where you pump and pedal, and I stay in shape and eat the right kind of food, and I want to die happy, so I'm staying in good health.
That's awesome. I want to close out by reading one last little piece of the book, and I'll just do it. And this is you went to visit Iwo Jima. You went back to the island in the early 80s, and this is something that you wrote as you were leaving the island after you went and visited the place where you had fought and where you lost so many friends. And the book says, "For each and every wave that has crashed upon these shores since those days so long ago, a mother has shed a tear for a son who fought and died here. Many of those mothers at this time have gone to be with their sons. Here, pride took over. You screamed loudly and ran straight ahead. Its notoriety was written in blood and courage. Absent are the sounds of battle that emphasized the human voice in all its emotions against a backdrop of roaring cannons and small arms fire. The engines of war are silent now. Iwo Jima today offers an innocuous view in stark contrast to what took place here in the winter of 1945. The hurtful and injurious qualities that it supported those days so long ago no longer are in evidence. Yes, the engines of war are silent here, but man has cranked them up many times since in other lands. Iwo today still offers a landscape that features a rugged coarseness. Everything that took place on this spot emphasized strength, power, and courage. Time and its helpmates, wind and rain, have erased the scars of war on the landscape, but still it presents a paradox with a rugged beauty about it. Time, on the contrary, has not healed the scars left on the hearts and bodies of those who fought here. There's nothing so brutal as when men point their brutality toward each other. My plane is rising to take me back to Japan. I look down on Iwo as a new day is having its beginning. Loneliness and sadness have crept aboard. My heart holds many unsaid words as I can't put into words the fragments of my thoughts and feelings. Thoughts and feelings that I can't ignore, a pain of unreasoning desolation. I'm engulfed by a gray veil of sadness. I leave with mixed emotions. I'm glad that I came while I regretting the return. Though great distances separate me from this island, the thought of it is always just a heartbeat away. I'm determined not to ever forget the men I marched among. All my tears will not ever wash away the memories. Now, in the twilight of my years, all I've got are my yesterdays and a whole arsenal of memories. And hell yes, I'd do it again. Once a Marine, always a Marine. That wraps up the book, sir. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say before we wrap this up.
I think you've just said it for me. I love the Marines, and I know that at some time in the future I will join those Marines and we will march through eternity with each other. It'll be a homecoming. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And obviously, thanks for coming on. More important, thanks for your service and your sacrifice for our great nation.
Well, it was an honor to serve you in this great country of ours. And God bless us all.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
And Mr. T. Fred Harvey has left the building, and that was pretty incredible. And thanks to every one of you listeners for giving us the opportunity to speak to these incredible heroes and share their stories. And none of this would be possible without your support. So, if you do want to support this podcast, and actually at the same time you can support yourself.
Of course.
That's kind of the way we've set things up.
That's how.
Echo, perhaps you could show us the way to properly support.
Sure. Of course. Be happy to. All right. First way is originmaine.com. Okay. So Origin, that's a company. Our company.
Mm-hmm.
Pete Roberts' company in Maine. So it's called originmaine.com. Anyway, this is where, okay, first thing you want to do to support yourself, very important, by the way, joint supplements. Krill oil, that's to me an everyday supplement. Actually, most of these everyday supplements, I think.
Yeah. There's some that might not necessarily be classified as everyday supplements.
Yeah, like the milk may not be everyday supplements.
Well, I beg to differ, sir.
Could be. Yeah. That's like maybe could, maybe couldn't.
Yeah. I guess it's not. I would say the one that I would say discipline, you don't need that every day.
Yeah.
Straight up krill and joint, yeah.
Yeah.
Joint warfare and krill oil, yeah. That's daily.
So super krill oil, not to split hairs, but
Yeah.
Jocko super krill oil is a krill oil supplement. People ask me still now, hey, there's fish oil, there's krill oil. What's better? Krill oil is better, not just because I like it better. It's factually better. This is why. Has more antioxidants.
Boom.
Better absorption.
Boom.
Better meaning like numbers wise.
Check.
And I can go into why. You want me to? I will.
I'm not really sure, but I
So
think
the omega-3s,
something's not gonna stop me.
the omega-3s get attached to your phospholipids, as opposed to in fish oil, the omega-3s get attached to the triglycerides. So
Well, there you have it,
that
dude.
method of delivery delivers a higher percentage of the omega-3s
Boom.
into your situation.
The science just stopped right there. You had limited science, but I still dig it, you know?
Yeah,
I
but you
dig
understand how it works now, though.
Yeah,
See,
for sure.
if you know that as a
Sure.
fact, unless I'm lying, which I'm not, you know how it works as a fact. You see what I'm saying? There's a difference between me saying
Let me
that.
tell you what I know.
No, all right.
You
No,
take
tell
it,
me.
you feel
Yeah.
better. That's what I know.
All right, see, that's very unscientific. You'd be like, okay, I feel better.
But wait a second. Honestly, if I came to you with a book and explained this to you technically, what would have more weight? Me being like, hey, here's how this works with the phosphogenic materials moving through your membranes. Or if I was like, bro, you got to try this because it works.
Yeah.
Which one would carry more weight?
With me, with me, I think the book.
Oh, the book trumps Jocko.
Only because the reason that you're making actually a really good point, in my opinion. The one, the whole, it's like social proof, right? Social proof. That's like a real thing.
But you started
It's way more
taking
compelling
krill oil because I told you to.
Because you, yeah.
Despite everything that the book
And
said.
I'll
So I
even-
think you just, speaking
Yeah.
of not telling the truth, I think you just lied.
I'm saying now. Well, you know what? You're absolutely right. And actually, I'll do
Thank
you one
you.
better. Actually, you'll do yourself one better. You told me to take krill oil. I took krill oil. My father-in-law's been telling me to take krill oil for a decade. Literally 1 decade. No krill oil.
I
Not
hope
even
he
one.
doesn't. Does he listen to the podcast? I hope not.
I hope not too.
Because otherwise you in trouble.
Highly disappointed. Nonetheless, I'll tell you what it does. It keeps your joints healthy. Healthy joints are happy joints. As far as joints being happy goes.
Listen to you with a little jingle.
I'm just saying, it's true, bro. It's true. Anyway, this is one of those things where it's like it's a marked. When I say it's not the kind like, hey, I just feel better. It's not that. That's real ambiguous in my opinion. When you're like, hey, I just feel better. I just feel better. You're like, all right, bro. Like there's a lot of things that can make you feel better. Like you get a good TV show on that'll make you feel better.
No.
Technically,
No.
Technically,
No.
Technically,
No.
for most people that are not you, bro.
No, bro.
Nonetheless, you see what I'm saying.
When you watch let's say a good TV show.
Hawaii Five-0.
Okay, you watch Hawaii Five-0.
Yes.
You're saying I'm not going to speak for you. If I watch a TV program, the whole time I'm watching a good TV program, there's something nagging in the back of my mind that's saying like, you could be doing something else.
Yeah.
You could be improving yourself.
Yeah, you're right.
You could be making progress somewhere. You could be prepping for a pot. You could be doing another workout. You could be swinging a kettlebell.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting there going, oh, this show is so awesome. I feel so good about it. Am I right or wrong?
You are right for
Okay.
yourself. I can see how you could think that.
So
and
there's
how
times
you
where you're
would.
watching a TV and you're pumped up, like saying
Yes.
you're okay.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Well,
We're
if I was
different.
one of
We're
those things.
different.
Well, here's the thing, though.
You still watch that TV program?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't on this past week, because the season finale was last week. So we're off for a few
I don't know
weeks.
if you still watched it after the incident. The incident.
Anyway, my point is, if someone says it makes me feel better, and the way they say it is a real general way, it's less compelling than them saying, like me in my situation.
Got it.
I'm like, hey, when I woke up, I did like practice perfect form in getting up out of my bed for my back not to bother me super bad, to the point of me actually admitting that it's painful sometimes. Actually, it's not painful. It's just like, you just kind of can't do it.
Yeah.
And my daughter would jump on my back, all this
Sometimes
stuff.
your back everything makes you talk like this.
Sometimes, yeah. Anyway, I take krill oil, boom, 6 days, a week later, boom, my dog jumping on my back, no problem. I fly out of bed like I just warmed up.
Now, what about
something
joint
like
warfare?
this. Same deal. See, and here's the thing. I didn't look as much into the scientific part of joint warfare.
Well, speaking of science, why don't you explain your arm injury before joint warfare, current?
Yeah, so
because this is pretty compelling, in my opinion.
Actually, very compelling in
It's
my
very
opinion
compelling.
too. So same deal. This is an anecdotal situation where, okay, all right, some of us may know. I tore my bicep tendon off the bone.
Again,
the other side now.
Yeah.
Hey man, it's that bicep life, It happens. Anyway, so yeah, this was a few weeks ago.
You're slightly
Whatever.
proud.
No,
the way you
I made
explained
a
to
joke.
me-
I thought I was proud of the joke.
But the way you explained to me that because your biceps are so massive, it puts extra tension on the tendons, and that's why they got torn. Even though you're explaining it like you're hard done by, but the reality is you kind of got a big smile on your face, all proud of the guns.
Anyway, bro, no. I'm proud of the joke.
Okay. That's
Anyway.
cool. Is that real though?
I think here's a more accurate way of putting it. So, yeah. So, okay, when you train biceps, right, typically, and some people train biceps there, but typically you don't go all the way down to straight, like no elbow mobility, and then all the way up with a super heavy weight. You just can't do that heavy weight unless you train that way the whole time. So
Cutting corners in training.
in a way,
Okay.
you can
that's
call it
understood.
that, and I dig it, yeah.
Cheating.
So I wouldn't call it cheating. Is there cheating?
Remember
No,
the big
really.
cheat sets with Arnold back in the day? That
Yes.
was total 90s bodybuilding. That was all.
Yeah, bro, it's
we were
real
all
though.
doing that, yeah.
So when you develop strength in your biceps with size and all that stuff, when you develop the strength exists mainly on a certain part of the curve of the
Right.
range of motion, right? Yeah. So, but that strength is still there big time. Your biceps muscle is super strong. But when you extend it to this flex, you still kind of have that strength in the muscle, but down there, it's like, I don't know, it's like the stability of the structure just isn't as much. I don't know. This is me.
Was your arm fully extended both times?
Both times, fully extended, and me just
a little flex.
flexing hard. Yeah, just going too hard, At the time, one was in a tournament, which obviously makes sense because you're rooting after it. And the other time, I got too excited training with a training partner I haven't trained with for a long time.
Training with Keeling,
and,
escalation.
Yeah.
A little fired up.
We'll see. Escalation, yeah. But anyway, nonetheless, tore off the bones. Bad deal. It's not one of those deals where it's like, oh, I pulled my muscle or whatever. This is so you got to go in, they cut it open, whatever. They stretch it back down. They staple it or whatever back to the bone. Actually, they drill in your bone. He told me that they drill in your bone, make little holes, and they staple it inside the hole. Then they staple it up, stitch you up. So I got that less than a week ago, by the way. Less than a week, literally. And so I'm like, all right, I got to, I'm out of the game for a little bit. I got to get back in as quick as I can. I up my dosage of joint warfare. Krill oil stayed the same. Joint warfare doubled. Actually, it didn't double it. Almost double. Mm-hmm. I was taking 2 a day. Now I take 3 and in the morning and then 2 at night. Right? It's almost double. So I do have a basic comparison because like you said, like we know, I had the exact same injury on the other side. Same surgery, same everything. 9 years ago, by the way. I wasn't, I'm older now. So that's something too. So this recovery, like given right now, is like way quicker. Like this morning, while I'm putting on pants, Origin pants, by the way, I literally forgot I had the injury just for a second.
That's pretty
you're
impressive.
just like doing it or whatever.
And we're not even a week out. Are we a week out?
Not even a week, yeah.
Because you were laid up for a while
For
with
the other one? Yeah.
9 years ago when you were a young buck.
Yep.
Yeah, well,
Same
there you go.
exact injury.
Joint warfare.
Boom. Yeah, and nothing
To
is
me,
different.
that is more compelling than you explaining the science behind it. And I'm not saying I don't believe the science. I'm saying I'm talking to you right now, and I've seen this with my own eyes. So that's like, to me, makes more sense.
Yeah,
it doesn't make more sense. Yeah.
This is it's to me, I'm more surprised. Like my wife gets mad at me. It's like, you're injured. You're gonna this and that, because I'm just like cruising, took off the sling or whatever, cruise around lifting weights, not with this arm. I'm not getting nuts. Actually, I'm kind of doing push-ups, like light push-ups on it. But yeah, it's like there's no pain, nothing, no inflammation. Well, very little inflammation, nonetheless. I think the, like, what do you call it? The scientific kind of information versus the peer, the approval. You know, what do you call it? Peer? It's called something. I said it earlier. Nonetheless, like if I tell you, like, oh, this works for me, and like legitimately, if you're a skeptic of the whole deal, like if you're like, I don't know if this works, then the scientific like stuff
if there's some reason.
Yeah.
If there's some reason for me to be telling you like to do something.
Yeah, like go to a psychic.
Yeah. Then it's
tarot card. Yeah, then I'm be like, no, bro, you're dumb for doing that. And then you see some scientific literature, then you're more compelled if it's solid.
No, I read the scientific literature, and obviously as we were putting it all together, it was like, all right, let's get the right stuff in there, which is stuff that I had used from other supplements in the past, but combine it all into one. There you go. Boom. All right.
Jocko supplements. Also, speaking of which, discipline. This is the one you mentioned that you don't take every day. See,
you know who does take it every day?
Dave Burke.
Dave
Good
Burke.
Deal Dave. Hell
Good
yeah.
Deal Dave.
So which is kind of
All about
something.
it.
Which is kind of something, because Dave is one of those smart guys.
Yeah,
Dave is kind of one of these guys who's like, he's an achiever. That guy.
Yeah, he's
him
an
and his
achiever.
brother, by the way.
Yeah.
So if he's doing it every day, there could be something to that. That's what I think. Another one of those.
He the way he talked to me about it, he like got all crazy, like big smile, and was like, I got it on it. He's like, I take it at this time at night, and that way I can wind down, and it gets me all blah blah blah. I was like, dang, Dave.
Dang, even the microdose of caffeine.
Yeah, a little microdose before you go to bed.
Well, he's probably used to the caffeine. That's why I
Yeah, well, no, he does. He takes it far enough ahead of when his family goes to bed.
Yeah.
He's like taking it, and then he gets a couple hours worth of good, solid output.
Yeah.
And then he goes to
Brain
bed.
output.
Yeah.
Here's a weird thing about caffeine. Just as a side note, bro, I've drank a coffee before and went to sleep. It's almost like the coffee put me to sleep.
I'm not like that.
No, because you don't drink caffeine.
Because I don't drink a lot of caffeine.
Yeah. Bro, if you drank a big coffee like the
believe
one
me.
I drink, bro,
Believe
you'd
me.
be...
Like during the muster,
Yeah.
because we're getting limited sleep during the muster, even limited for my standards.
Yeah.
I take caffeine. I mean, I take this right here. I take this right here. I take Jocko white tea, and I take the Discipline.
But you just keep drinking it.
Yeah, I drink a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because, I'm busy.
But a coffee, you figure, 15 per serving milligrams. And then, so like one of those things I was drinking, I don't know, not today, but the other day, is 300 milligrams of caffeine.
That's just dumb.
So that if you sipped on that like over, a 2-3 hour period and just drank the whole
you're
thing,
gonna be
ultimately
fired up.
you will be fired up.
No,
Me
there's
sometimes.
times where I've drank like tons of Red Bull and just been like,
Yeah.
which is why I try to taper off the heavy caffeine.
Yeah,
Taper off the heavy caffeine. Like that's why I don't make beverages that have 900 milligrams of caffeine, because it doesn't. You don't need that. You don't want that. You start getting it starts having other effects. You start getting like you talk too much, right?
Yeah.
You talk too much. Actually, speaking of talking too much, I just met someone that came to roll, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's really good to meet you because I listen to the podcast." And he's like, "Cool." And then we rolled and we talked a little bit, and he's like, "You're just like on the podcast." And I said, "Well, it's like just we're hitting record as we discuss things." And then I said, probably the biggest difference between me on the podcast and me in real life is that in real life in the podcast I talk the whole time, and in real life I actually don't talk very much. I talk a lot less, I should say.
A lot less.
Yeah, especially with people I don't know. With people I don't know, I'm not very conversational. When I know someone, I'm cool to talk. But
so if you put 200 milligrams of caffeine rather than 15 you'd be talking a lot.
Yeah,
It's against
yeah.
your whole thing.
Yeah. Well, it'd be making me act out of character.
Out of character, yeah, that's what I mean.
It'd be influencing me in a negative way, I believe.
Yeah.
But if you can just get in the zone,
yeah,
it sharpens the mind. I mean, caffeine's proven to sharpen you up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
anyways.
Yeah, to each his own, you know. I think most people who like caffeine, they're like coffee and stuff, like they like that.
And that's one thing. If you know, you might need more discipline, you might need more caffeine to feel it if you're not, if you're used to it. If you have what's that tolerance?
Yeah, low tolerance or something like that, or if high tolerance. But yeah, and let's face it, discipline, Jocko white tea, that's not why you drink it. You don't drink it because of the caffeine.
No.
That's not why. That's, you know, you'll include the caffeine.
Yeah, the caffeine definitely,
bonus,
it's a little microdose.
Something.
Get you rocking and rolling.
But yeah, that's good. Discipline, cognitive enhancement, that's what you drink it for. Before you do some stuff that needs brain output. That's when you take it. That's when I take it. That's when Good Deal Dave takes it. And that's when Jocko takes it. Also, Mulk. This is protein powder, but to call it protein powder is kind of disservice.
For sure.
Because it's just we're just go with Mulk. Here's the thing though. We don't want someone, I personally, I know, I'm gonna speak for myself, I don't want someone to hear, hey, Mulk, hey, what is that? Okay, tastes good, all this stuff, but like, you know, there's a lot of stuff that tastes good. You will get good protein from Mulk.
Yes, you will.
Very important to know
what else
that.
is in there's probiotics.
Oh, no kidding. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and see what's good. What doesn't probiotics? Okay, maybe for you it's not like this. When I hear probiotics, I always think like, oh, that's something that, you know, someone's like, oh, you got to take your probiotics, right? Like it's not something, you know. For me, it's like, oh, I'm gonna take protein. Good.
Yeah.
Probiotics. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But so I've taken them like a couple times before, but there's probiotics in it, and so now I realize like, I feel good. Like my gut feels good. So maybe there's something to that probiotic activity.
Okay, bro. Okay,
there.
so when you say maybe I'm not like that, you're correct. I'm not like that. Probiotics are good. Like antibiotics. Well, antibiotics are good, but what they're for.
I got it. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So probiotics are like, they're probiotic.
Well said.
See what I'm saying?
Well said. Nicely done.
No, basically like your gut biome, right?
Yes.
It promotes healthy bacteria, all this stuff in your thing. It's a huge deal.
Yeah,
actually.
I know. Now I'm starting to realize that. I started to realize I've been wrong for 46 years.
Yeah, it's kind of like if I have like, it's a metaphor right now. If I have the key to life, right? The answer to life, right? What is the meaning of life? I have it in my. I'm about to tell you, right? But you have earplugs in, so you can't hear me. I still told you.
Yeah.
But you can't get it in your brain because you have earplugs. Well, you put that probiotics, boom, takes the earplugs out, boom, you got it in your brain. Same thing.
That's
Same
great.
exact thing, except it's
You should turn that whole
biome.
thing into an advertisement. I think that's just incredible.
Maybe I will. Anyway, it's called Mulk, and it is mint chocolate flavor.
And peanut butter's coming. Peanut butter chocolate's coming.
See, that's
and then it's just going to be. Yeah. And I think we're good on chocolate, just straight chocolate.
You're good. Like that's a go.
I've got the sample, and I had it this weekend, and yes, it is G-O-double-D good.
Well, I think the chocolate is kind of the staple, right?
It is, and that's why it took us a little
that.
while because it's hard to nail it.
Yeah.
No one to nail it.
Right, to make it taste like chocolate and not diet chocolate or something like this.
I don't want anything that tastes diet anything.
You see what I'm saying? Cool. Well, nonetheless, be on the lookout for that. And that is, if you're taking protein powder and are like, hey, I want some good quality protein powder, forget about the term protein powder.
Yeah, because that gives you the idea that this is going to taste like crap. And this is the miracle. It tastes delicious.
Straight up
and
miracle.
It tastes delicious, and it's got no sugar in it. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
that
awesome.
is a miracle. Also,
or whatever, wait. Does it have a gram? It might have like a gram.
We'll put it this way: it's not full with sugar like the old school Mega Mass 5 million in the big dog
It's not
food
got that.
bag. Remember that shit?
Not that good.
Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was good. That tasted kind of good, but
It's
still
sweetened
had
with monk fruit.
Yeah.
That's that. So if you're wondering, like, well, how does it taste? Not like the artificial sweeteners that people serve up, which taste nasty. Like no matter what, it tastes like crap.
Is monk fruit creamy? Nah, I mean, that's a weird question, but like monk fruit, because it doesn't taste like, you know how you use like a I guess, you know, like a sweetener. It has a fruity sweetened thing. Like the chocolate mint doesn't have any.
I don't know what it
kind
looks
of
like
fruity.
in its raw form, but I know that it tastes freaking delicious.
Well, I'm gonna look into that one, and I will report back. Speaking of reporting back, if in fact you want to look at it this way, I'm reporting back to the 3 people this week that asked me what gi should I get when I start jiu-jitsu. So I know to most of us this is obvious right now, but I will answer this question anyway. It is an Origin gi and rash guard if you're doing no gi, by the way. But you get an Origin gi. You get the Origin gi for many reasons. Not only because it's the best gi, but because it's made in America as well. And there's plenty of options on there. So me saying get an Origin gi, it's not just one Origin gi. I guess technically in a way you just get if it's an Origin, it's good, but you have many different options within the brand of Origin gis. So go there. Like I said, originmain.com. That's where you get everything.
Made in America.
Made in America. From the dirt to the shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, because if you don't really know what that means, it might not make as much sense. But when you do know what it means, it will make sense. This is what it means. The cotton is grown from America, or in America, from the dirt. Get it now. And then the shirt at the end, where technically it's a gi. Or whatever you get. Boom. Anyway, Made in America, everything. Originmain.com. Also, there's an immersion camp. Jiu-Jitsu immersion camp.
Filling up, by the way.
Yeah.
Filling up quick.
So get on that. Well, the space is big, so which is good.
Yeah.
The jiu-jitsu at the muster was good.
Yeah,
how
it's pretty
big
awesome.
that was?
Yeah.
That was good, man. And it was still not big enough, I think.
Well,
I
we'll
think
double up if we have to.
Yeah.
We're ready to order more mats. But
Yeah,
it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I sort of have an announcement to make on that, too.
All right.
You know who's coming up to that camp?
Lay it on me.
A guy by the name of Dean Lister.
No,
Yeah,
dang.
Dean's coming
the
up.
knowledge.
So-
Okay, good.
The knowledge. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just straight knowledge. And if you come up, you get a chance to learn from Dean Lister. And, yeah, that's as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
Learning from
Dean
the
is one of
Lish.
those guys, like kind of those wizard types.
Yeah.
With, I remember, and granted, I was a
And
white
he's
belt.
not even a kind of like thing.
Yeah, straight up.
He's got a gift.
Yeah.
Like a legit gift that people do not have.
Yeah. You ever, and I'm not even asking, have you ever, because I know you have probably many times, but you ask Dean a question about like this problem that you're having.
Oh, yeah.
And you're having it because the guy who's doing it to you, this
For
move
sure.
to you is just super good. But
Yeah.
you're having this problem and you're kind of halfway thinking, actually more than halfway thinking, this is not really an answerable question, but whatever, the more info I have. And you ask him and then he solves your problem.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, bro, have you been thinking about this the whole time? All this jujitsu stuff or whatever, while all of us have been living life kind of thing. That's what it seems like.
He taught something the other day. And it's from, I use the crucifix a lot.
Sure.
So he taught something from the crucifix that I'd never saw before, never thought of. And he did it like it was just like, like taking a breath. He's like, oh yeah, when you get this, you do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you serious? I've been training with you for 23 years and you never maybe gave me a heads up on that?
Yeah.
Bruh. And the reason is there's so much in his brain. There's so much jiu-jitsu in his brain, he can't even like figure out what to tell you unless you come to him with a problem.
Right.
That's why it's great
Yeah.
if you're coming to the immersion camp, come with problems for Dean.
Yeah.
Come with questions for Dean because that's what you want, and then you can draw the answers out that you need from him because there's too much. You can't download everything from his brain. You can't.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, he's going to teach you like you learn this one thing. No, you're going to have to bring questions to him that then he'll solve problems for you.
Yeah.
That's what I recommend. Jiu-Jitsu camp, immersion camp.
Yes.
26 September through May 2nd. Did you say that already?
August
Oh,
26th.
sorry. I guess I said it wrong.
End of August. Oh, good. I remember that because that is my son's birthday. August 26th through September 2nd. 2 sessions?
Or you can say for the whole
Or
time.
the whole deal. Yeah, man. Good deal. Good
Register
fun.
register at originmain.com.
Yep. Leif is going. Leif Babin. Dave Burke. Good deal, Dave.
Yep.
I'm going. JP's going.
I think it's going. Yeah.
How's this Dean? When I got my surgery last week, I'm going in for my surgery. Dean is there just coming out of his surgery.
Yep.
So how is he going to be as far as rolling?
He won't be able to go roll hard.
Yeah.
But I trained yesterday, just a little in-house little core group of guys. We came and trained, and Dean came and coached, and he was showing moves.
Yeah.
So and
like
this
he
is
was-
yeah,
okay.
he was putting pressure.
Yeah. I'll be there kind of on the
You'll be on the
little,
cusp.
on the fence there. Like I rolled with Pete like, you know, at
yeah,
origin, where before I got my surgery, but my bicep was detached, and I just put my hand like this. I couldn't. You just basically can't pull.
Yeah.
I can anyway. This is my injury. Bicep, I can't pull.
You just have to be careful.
Yeah, so I could do a lot of that kind of rolling,
Yeah.
but it's hard. I can't roll probably with like, you know, like
level 12 head hunters.
Yeah, less experience or something like that.
Yeah, I'll just roll with you.
No, you can't roll with me. I'll roll with Pete. That's all. I basically just trust Pete. That's it, pretty much. But yeah, go to that. That'll be fun. Don't worry what level jiu-jitsu you're at. Even if you're at literally level 0.
We had level 0 people came last year.
Yeah, like
first
a big
jiu-jitsu
group
class.
of them too.
For sure.
Yeah, it's good.
Come and get it.
So yeah, come and get it. Also, for fitness gear, the best fitness gear, some of the best fitness gear, all the fitness gear I have pretty much onnit.com/Jocko. That's where you get it. Also, I got Onnit socks, by the way. Freaking awesome. Got them on right now. Yeah, get the primal bells, the kettlebells. See what I'm saying? And when you're looking for the information before you start the kettlebells, it can be dangerous, bro. Swinging around big cannonballs.
Yeah, sure. Could have a mishap.
Yeah, look at that. Big time. They got some good information on technique and all that stuff. It's good. A lot of cool stuff on there. Onnit.com/Jocko. Also, when you get the books that Jocko reviews on this podcast, I got them organized on the website, jockopodcast.com. Books from the episode, this little tab on the top. Click on there. Boom. I got them all organized by episode. Click through there, take it to Amazon, and, you know, do your shopping. Get the book. Get whatever else. Keep shopping. Whatever. Or not. Whatever you like. Nonetheless, it's a good way to support if you do. Also, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. On Stitcher and iTunes and Google Play and wherever you listen to the podcast. Because there's a lot of podcast apps out there, and I get it. It's good. It's a good thing. Vast marketplace of podcast apps. Get in there. Nonetheless, subscribe when you do, and that's a good way to support. Also on YouTube, video version of this podcast, if you're interested in that video version. Also, we got excerpts on there. It's a good reason to subscribe, in my opinion. So when I put out an excerpt, maybe that's the one that really you're waiting for. Rather than sifting through all the episodes and then sifting through the episode, which is 3-4 hours long sometimes. And then, oh, there it is, and then listening to it kind of thing. And, you know, I don't know how practical that is sometimes. So boom, I try to put all the excerpts, all the points, all the significant points, and there's a lot, by the way, that Jocko makes. Try to put them in excerpts on the YouTube channel. Maybe that's the one you were looking for. It's good. That's a good reason to subscribe, in my opinion. So yeah, do that. Good way to support as well. Also, Jocko has a store. It's called Jocko Store. So let me ask you this. Not you, Jocko. Ask the people. Have you ever looked at Jocko's shirt and been like, you know what? I wish I had that shirt. Or have you ever looked at a shirt that I wear that says discipline equals freedom? Have you ever looked at that and said, dang, I want that shirt? Guess what? There's a place you can get them. It's called jockostore.com. That's where you can get it. Discipline equals freedom. Get after it shirt. The actual shirt that Jocko's wearing right now, literally the one that Jocko's wearing right now, you can get that shirt. Represent big time. Good way to support and support yourself. There's also rash guards and stuff on there. Patches, hoodies, hats, new hats, by the way.
Trucker hats.
Trucker hats.
Well, I
and
like the trucker hats.
Yeah, the flex fit. I thought you'd like the flex fit.
Yeah, I don't like flex fit, actually. But I know that's probably the preferred hat in the population of the world is the flex fit.
Yeah, I
just
think
still
so.
like trucker hats. Old school back in the day.
Have you ever worn a flex fit hat?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
you have? Oh, straight up. All right.
Yeah.
And you don't like that one. You don't like the convenience of the flex fit. I guess if you have the snapback, you just put it on one side. It's not like your head gets bigger.
My head does not get bigger
Your head gets bigger.
or smaller on a daily basis.
Really? Because after we roll, sometimes I feel like your head's kind of bigger.
No, I think that just might be the way you feel.
Mine's just smaller. I get it. Nonetheless, both types of hats on there. Women's stuff on there as well. I'm putting tank tops on there. So be on the lookout for that.
Like for dudes tank tops?
There's already women's tank tops on there.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna get dudes going
dudes.
old school.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, exactly right. Boom, summertime.
Yeah.
Right? Boom, show off the guns.
Beanies.
Sun's out, guns out, beans out. Beanies are in just in time for summer. All good. But you know, some places like Alaska, summertime's cold too. So boom, get the beanie. Also, Psychological Warfare. If you didn't know what that is, it's an album, Jocko's album on iTunes with tracks Jocko tracks, and here's what it is. Not Jocko singing, it's Jocko talking to you. Every track is Jocko talking to you. And what he's telling you is reasons why you shouldn't give in to the weakness that you will be giving into sometimes if you don't have this. You will be giving into this weakness on your path, on your campaign against weakness, on the path, on the war path. We're all on the path, by the way. Are we not?
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think you're kind of the leader on this path. I kind of evaluated
I'm just
this.
over here doing
like
what
the
I'm
other day.
doing.
Okay. No. And I was into working out before. I get it. You know. But it's the kind where, like, if I didn't feel like working out, it's like I just kind of won't work out. I'll do it tomorrow because I will, and I would usually, you know, kind of thing. But when you kind of quantify it as this path, and when the term campaign against weakness kind of got introduced, that's a really good thing too, because generally speaking, that's really what jams you up in my opinion, in my experience, where, yeah, if I don't feel like doing it, right? I don't feel like doing it. That's weakness, right? If I say, oh, I'm not going to do it because I don't feel like it, then you go through life not feeling like doing stuff and not doing it. And most of the time we don't feel like it, especially as you get older, especially as you take on other responsibilities. But if you make it a point to understand that I'm going to consciously not feel like doing something, understand that it needs to be done, then kind of fight that kind of weakness there. That's the path I'm talking about.
And this will help you with that path.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
what I
sorry.
mean.
But yeah, back to the psychological
it's
warfare.
good. I think you wrapped it up nicely.
No,
I don't think you need to go into any more detail.
To me, it's important to understand that, because the more that, in my opinion, or in my experience, the more I understood that, the more like kind of effective, you know, you are in staying on this path. So anyway, when you reach like a little small point of weakness, you listen to this album, specific track that is designated for that weakness. 100%, you will not give in to that weakness.
That's good. Psychological warfare. We need to make a second album.
Yeah.
People need to ask what they want to hear.
Yeah.
What moments of weakness need to be overcome.
Yeah.
I know I had some for like smoking.
Yeah.
Some for drinking.
Drinking would be a good one.
Check. Yeah.
Yeah. The way it was born was because of a weakness that I specifically had, like something that it kind of like got to me late, you know, like later on.
Yeah.
Like at the time, I'm like, whatever. Why should I put this much pressure on myself? Is that healthy? You ever do that?
No, I know
you
don't
don't do that. Come on, let's face it. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like it's a justification, but it's like, hey, you shouldn't put so much pressure on yourself. You know, don't add this stress. Hey, life is stressful. Don't add more stress like this. You know, when it's like unnecessary.
Add more stress.
Like, it's just an excuse,
Stress is how
man.
you
Add
grow.
more stress.
Cool.
It's true.
All right, quiet
That's
on the
Rob
set.
Jones.
I'm going to do a sound effect thing. Are you ready? So, Jocko
Right.
White tea. Obviously, for a long time, we've had tea bags that you can get.
Yeah.
What's that called? Dry tea is what it's called.
Yeah.
And Jocko White tea available on Amazon. Real tasty and good for you. And we just got it made and put into cans. So here we go. Sound effects. Are you ready? Here we go. This is Jocko White tea opening. Oh, there you go. So now you can get Jocko White tea in a can. It is delicious, and it's good for you. And you know, even if you don't like the taste, even if you don't like that it's good for you, you will like the fact that after you drink one can, you'll be able to deadlift 8,000 pounds minimum. That's the minimum.
Yeah.
And it's been proven scientifically, backwards and forwards, double-blind, placebo,
Sure.
whatever you want to call it. Yeah, Jocko White tea. It's available on Amazon. Eventually, we'll get it everywhere. That's the goal. But right now, it's available on Amazon because that's the quickest way to get it out to everyone. So there you go. Get it. Victory in a can. Organic. Did I tell you that?
No,
Certified
but
organic.
I saw it on the deal. Actually, I saw
certified
the deal
organic.
in the beginning. And
Just because.
I'm impressed, man. No GMOs here.
No reason to go and drink a drink that's going to have been filled with a bunch of stuff that you don't want in your body.
Agree.
Just drink Jocko White tea. All right, books. We've got the Way of the Warrior Kid series. And I got, here's just a little note. A guy wrote, my 8-year-old who read your book, Way of the Warrior Kid, in January 2018. Since then, he has gone beast mode. Runs 1.3 kilometers most mornings before school and 2.6 kilometers on the weekends. He trains, plays, and enjoys life since reading your book. His room is immaculately tidy. Your book switched something in him. he is self-motivated and strives to achieve. We talk about 1% in life and doing the small things well in school and sports. Thanks for your service and the book. So there you go. No big deal, right? Can you imagine that? That's freaking awesome. I love
His
hearing that.
room is immaculate.
Immaculate. He's on the path, you know?
Yeah.
The path.
Big time.
So pick up Way of the Warrior Kid and Mark's Mission. Get your kid on the path. If you want to support a warrior kid named Aiden that's making things happen, go to IrishOaksRanch.com and get some of the soap that he makes on his farm from goat milk. He makes Jocko soap so you can stay clean. Don't forget about the Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual, of course. This was awesome. I was at the muster. And we're doing PT. It's 4:35 in the morning or something. And this woman comes up to me, and she's a little older, and she just looks at me and she's like, "Can I tell you something?" Though that look was on her face, and so I gave her the nod of like, "Go ahead and tell me." And she's like, "It was November 7th, 2017, and I was at Sam's Club, and I saw this book, this black book, and I never saw a book like that." And I picked it up and looked at it and said, "This, I've never seen anything like this." She bought it. And since that time, she's lost 23 pounds, and she said she's got her life back. Boom. That's awesome. So you know who you are out there. So thank you for letting me know that. That was a very cool story to hear. And I appreciate that feedback. That's the Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. Thoughts and actions. Both inside. If you want the audio version of that, which people still ask me every single day, you can't get it on Audible. It's not on Audible. It's on Amazon Music, iTunes, Google Play, and other MP3 platforms as an album with tracks. Also for leadership, of course, there's the first book, Extreme Ownership, the leadership book for the battlefield, business, and life. And actually somebody else at the muster said, "Hey, you never talk about the Audible version of Extreme Ownership," because that is available on Audible. And guess who reads it? Leif Babin and me. Mm-hmm. And this guy was saying, you should, everyone should be listening to that. It's better to listen to it than to read it, which that depends on who you are. But for this individual, he was like, "You need to tell people about that. That's awesome that you guys," and anyone else is on that audiobook? Sound effects. We put sound effects in there. Machine gun fire, explosions, things like that. You know why? Cause
immersion.
Immersion. So yeah. So you can get that. Also coming out September 25th, we have the follow-on book to Extreme Ownership. It's called The Dichotomy of Leadership. It's available for pre-order wherever you want to pre-order. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, local bookstore. It's going to be out September 25th. If you want one of the first edition copies, which you do, if you want to be a book person like me, you want to get that first edition because that's cool. And if you don't order it, then you won't get it in time because the publisher won't make enough because they have no idea. They don't understand how many people are out there waiting for this book. So if you want it, order it. That'd be cool. If you want to work with us in person, call Echelon Front. It's me, Leif Babin, JP Donnell, Dave Burke. Our website is echelonfront.com, and we solve problems through leadership. That's it. Of course, the muster leadership seminar, 005 was in Washington, D.C. It was awesome, and it sold out, yes. And there's only one more muster in 2018. It's muster 006 in San Francisco, California, October 17th and 18th. Register at extremeownership.com. If you want to come, it will sell out. And that's all there is to it. And also for current law enforcement, military, firefighters, paramedics, and other first responders, roll call 001, September 21st in Dallas, Texas. One-day leadership training seminar focused on people in uniform. You can register for that also at extremeownership.com. And until the muster or the roll call or the immersion camp in Maine, if you want to communicate with us, you know that you can find us on the interwebs. Echo is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. And to the men of the greatest generation like Mr. T. Fred Harvey, thank you for your service. And to the rest of the men and women out there continuing to hold the line, thanks to you and to your families for what you do every day and what they do to support you. Of course, thanks to all the first responders, police, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, and those who stand the watch 24/7 to keep us safe. And to the rest of you, life can be hard, and life can be challenging, and life can contain a fair amount of suffering. But you know what? It's the one life you've got. So go and live a life that in the end allows you to look back and say, hell yes, I'd do it all again. Until next time, this is Echo and Jocko, out.